Chukir had just poured a glass of water for Ju Yun, who was chatting with Jiang Yi. Is there anything we need to prepare to help you? If it's a long journey, let me come with you. It's always safer to have a doctor along, Jiang Yi said, mulling it over as he lay on the sofa. No rush, I still have a few things to take care of, Jiang Yi replied. As they were talking, Yanmi and Zhu Haimei, hearing footsteps, also came out. Seeing the two women, Ju Yun exclaimed in surprise, Are you Yanmi and Zhu Haimei? Before the apocalypse, Yanmi and Zhu Haimei were both famous stars, so of course she recognized them. After learning Yu Yun's identity, they also politely greeted her. A strange feeling about Jiang Yi began to stir in Ju Yun's heart. She probed and found out that Yanmi and Chukir were both Jiang Yi's people. This displeased her. Although she knew that capable men were often surrounded by many women, in her heart, Jiang Yi was now her. Pray, how could he be so promiscuous? For a moment, she started to feel bored again. Subsequently, the others in the house were also called up. De Yun's face began to show clear signs of confusion. In this household, besides the three of them, there were several other young and beautiful girls. In terms of looks, Yang Xin was not inferior to Chukir and Yang Mai. The key point was that she was only 18 years old, youthful and vibrant. Lu Qiran and Lian Yu also had very outstanding looks. The crucial thing was that they both possessed a very special temperament, that of independent women, not the type to be mere adornments. The flock of chirping swallows made Ju Yun's mood a little uncomfortable. Ahem, Mr. Jun, when do we depart? She asked. There's something I'm not sure if I should say, but this is a secret mission, so it's best not to bring along people who are not related to the mission. Jiang Ye looked deeply at Ju Yun, remaining silent for a few seconds before saying to Yang Mi, prepare a room for Miss Ju to rest. Du Yun naturally understood that Jiang Yi wanted to discuss matters with his own people and didn't want an outsider like her present. She stood up proudly and went out with Yang Mi. A moment later, Yang Mi returned with a smile and said, she really likes the room arranged for her. After speaking, she sat down next to Jiang Yi and asked, Jiang Yi, who is she really? Is she some powerful awakened person from the investigation team? At first, everyone in the shelter was somewhat in awe of Yu Yun. They assumed that anyone sent by Xu Zhen to accompany Jiang Yi on a mission must be a highly capable expert. Jiang Yi said nonchalantly, she's just connected, the niece of Xu Zhen. He probably wants me to take her along to gain some experience, to make it easier for her to get promoted later. A hint of amusement flickered in Yang Xin's eyes. She tilted her head to look at Jiang Yi's profile. But, from what I see, her attitude towards you is a bit strange. Jiang Yi snorted, crossing his arms and saying, she's from a powerful and wealthy family, used to being arrogant. Yang Xin gave a peculiar smile. She exchanged glances with Chukir and the others, then said, Brother Jiang Yi, you don't understand women. I think she seems to have taken an interest in you. Jiang Yi was taken aback, pointing to his own nose and saying with a wry smile, interested in me. Chukir nodded. I feel the same way. When she saw us, she seemed a little uncomfortable. I saw nothing but jealousy in her eyes. Jiang Yi couldn't help but say, there's no other way, it seems my charm is still too strong. Has she fallen in love with me at first sight? He said it with a laugh, finding the situation slightly absurd. The moment Ju Yun met him, she started scrutinizing him, clearly not having a good first impression. Perhaps Xu Zhen wants to marry her off to you, Yang Xingzhen said, getting straight to the heart of the matter. Your brother is now a highly sought-after person. All the major forces in Blizzard City are trying to win you over. The Din family has provided you with technical support, and even specially trained your friends. It wouldn't be strange for Xu Zhen to want to use marriage to rope you in. As Yang Xingzhen spoke, Jiang Yi realized something was amiss. However, he laughed nonchalantly. Old Xu must be getting senile. Jiang Yi had no interest in such a snobbish young lady, though he did entertain the thought of conquering such an arrogant woman. Unfortunately, Xu Yun's personality was not to his taste. He was a refined egoist, not blindly driven by lust. Feelings were merely the spice of life, not the main course. Even with Jiu Kir, if it hadn't been for her status as a doctor, she wouldn't have been able to join his inner circle. Don't pay any attention to her. After this mission is over, our paths will never cross again, he said. He understood Xu Zhen's intentions, but Xu Zhen couldn't force him to marry Xu Yun. Ultimately, the decision was in Jiang Yi's hands. Jiu Kir anxiously grasped Jiang Yi's hand. Even so, you'll be away from home for this mission, won't you? They say familiarity breeds affection. Who can guarantee that something unexpected won't happen between you two? Jiang Yi chuckled and gently patted the back of her hand. Don't worry. No matter how delicious a poisoned meal is, I won't take a single bite. If she were just an easy-going woman, he wouldn't mind having a pleasant affair. However, behind Xu Yun was Xu Zhen. Getting involved with her would be asking for trouble, and Jiang Yi wasn't that foolish. Uncle, you asked with concern, Jiang Yi, is this mission dangerous? Zhang Yai hadn't specified the details of the mission to everyone, so they all understood that he wouldn't be taking many people with him. Zhang Yi laughed heartily. It's hard to say. There probably won't be any major dangers, but in the current state of the world, you can never be sure. But you don't need to worry about me. I have the ability to protect myself. He had already considered that even if the ship were to be wrecked at sea, his abilities would be enough to ensure his survival. Everyone should just guard the house as usual. For this voyage, Zhang Yai only planned to bring Jiukir along. Since the trip would last for months, it was inevitable that someone on board might get sick, making a doctor essential. After arranging everything at home, Zhang Yai contacted Chen Jingguan, asking him to prepare an icebreaker and a crew for the voyage. Give me your most experienced sailors for transoceanic travel. Chen Jingguan received the order and naturally didn't dare to object, promptly making the arrangements for Zhang Yai. Due to the urgency of the mission, Zhang Yai went to Jiao Port that afternoon to inspect the ship and the personnel. As per Zhang Yai's request, Jiao Port provided its most advanced icebreaker, the Golden Wind. The port also had warships, but due to the mission's confidential nature, they were ruled out. Zhang Yi stepped aboard the massive icebreaker. The Golden Wind was 106 meters long, with a deadweight of 16,000 tons and could hold 2,000 tons of fuel. In the post-Ice Age era, it was undoubtedly the best choice for a long sea journey. Chen Jingguan had assigned Zhang Yai the most seasoned sailors, including the old Han Tian Yui and 12 others. Their average time at sea was over 7 years, and all were veterans of long-distance voyages. Zhang Yai gathered everyone to explain the importance of the mission. We are setting sail to a distant land to bring some overseas compatriots back home. This is my first time on a long sea voyage. Along the way, I need your full cooperation. He held up a finger. The most important thing is that everyone must control their tongues. There is to be no contact with the outside world. After we pick up the people, you are not to communicate with them. You can call me Captain or Mr. Zhang, but do not reveal my name. Has everyone got that? Zhang Yi said in a stern voice. All the sailors hurriedly shouted, understood. Zhang Yi nodded and told Chen Jingguan to collect all of their personal weapons, which Zhang Yi would then issue uniformly. Additionally, Zhang Yi asked Chen Jingguan about installing more weaponry on the icebreaker. Chen Jingguan replied, if so, we'll have to modify the hull, which could take some time. The icebreaker doesn't have a place for a naval gun. Zhang Yi sighed, if it really comes down to it, we'll just have to go for a retro 6-barreled gun tower on the ship. He had considered it carefully. The reason for not using a warship was to avoid attracting the attention of other factions. But if they had no defensive weapons and ran into real trouble, Zhang Yi would have to solve it himself, which could easily expose his identity. After thorough consideration, he decided that if a fight was necessary, he could play a game of naval artillery offense on the sea. As for dealing with submarines, he had also prepared various types of sea mines. These might not necessarily be used against submarines, but they were more likely intended to deal with giant, mutated sea creatures that could appear underwater. Within the day, Chen Jingguan had the ship and basic living supplies ready. Early the next morning, Zhang Yi led Zhu Yun and Chukir to the Jiaowu pier. Du Yun seemed surprised that Chukir was also coming along. She pulled Zhang Yi aside to a corner to voice her opinion. Zhang Yi, it's not that I'm narrow-minded, but this is an important mission. For you to bring your girlfriend along, isn't that a bit inappropriate? Zhang Yi frowned and replied calmly, Kir is a doctor. We'll be at sea for a long time. What do you think will happen without a doctor? Without one, even a common cold could be fatal. Du Yun insisted, aren't there any other doctors? The sailors on board are all men. Bringing a beautiful woman like me is already more than enough. Adding another one, isn't that a bit unsuitable? Zhang Yi looked at her mockingly and smiled slyly. It's fine, I'm only bringing one beautiful woman. Du Yun froze, instantly understanding that Zhang Yi was implying she wasn't as beautiful as Chukir. She stomped her foot in anger. Please be serious about this mission. Zhang Yi's brows furrowed, and for the first time, he spoke to her in a stern tone. Miss Zhao, I need you to remember clearly that I am the leader of this mission. You are just accompanying me. Don't raise your voice at me. To be frank, if it weren't for my respect for Marshal Zhu, I wouldn't even bother bringing you along. So, from now on when you speak to me, you'd better know your place. Do you understand? If you're unreasonable one more time, I'll send you right back. As Zhang Yi's anger flared, Zhu Yun immediately softened, unable to speak. He was a man who had been through a sea of blood and a mountain of corpses. Once angered, the cold killing intent from his body was enough to terrify an inexperienced young lady from a privileged family like her. She timidly stammered, unable to form a complete sentence. Zhang Yi didn't want to look at her anymore and turned to find Chukir. However, after he left, Zhu Yun turned to look in the direction he had gone, and a peculiar look entered her eyes. Since she was young, no man had ever dared to shout at her. Suddenly she felt that Zhang Yi exuded a masculine aura, which made her heart flutter a little. Zhang Yi went to Chukir's room. She was packing her personal clothes and belongings. Even with more than a dozen suitcases filled, she didn't complain a bit, not worried about running out of space. Because Zhang Yi had his spatial ability, it didn't matter how much stuff there was. Zhang Yi leaned against the door, watching her. As she bent over to pack, her beautiful figure and perfect curve still made his heart stir. Zhang Yi crossed his arms and said casually, being at sea is not comfortable. This trip will take at least 2 or 3 months. The rough seas and strong winds will definitely not be as comfortable as being at home. Have you thought it through? Hearing this, Shukir stood up, stretching long and revealing her slender, fair waist. She smiled brightly at Zhang Yi. Of course. If it weren't for this opportunity, I would never get to live in a world of just the two of us like this. She walked over, a smile playing on her lips, and hugged Zhang Yi's arm, pressing her body against his. No matter what, I have to help you. Besides, she gave a sly smile, her eyes full of playfulness. You said it yourself, the trip will take 2 or 3 months. Without me by your side, you'll be very uncomfortable, right? I won't create an opportunity for that other woman. Xu Zheng sent Zhu Yun to follow Zhang Yi with an unconcealed purpose. He hoped something would happen between Zhang Yi and Zhu Yun. However, everyone understood that in the chaotic and unclear situation of the apocalypse, it was best not to belong to any faction. But on a sea voyage lasting several months, if there were no other women on board, who could guarantee that Zhang Yi wouldn't fall? Zhang Yi asked himself and wasn't sure either. He sighed, embracing Shukir's graceful figure. You are very thoughtful. Rest assured, setting other things aside, I can definitely guarantee your safety even if we encounter danger at sea. With his abilities of air control and spatial shift, even if there was an accident at sea, it would be no problem for him to escape with Shukir. Before setting off, he had also studied all the coral islands along the route. Despite Zhu Yun's objections, Zhang Yi brought Shukir out to sea with him. The others, especially the women in the house, had dissenting opinions, most notably young Xin Tin. She looked at Zhang Yi with pitiful, glistening eyes, clearly wanting to go with him as well. Lu Qiran also suggested that she could serve as a mechanic on the ship to help with repairs. But Zhang Yi resolutely rejected all these requests. This was not a pleasure cruise, but an extremely important mission. Even he couldn't be sure what dangers they might encounter at sea. If something really happened. With his current strength, he couldn't protect so many people. Nevertheless, the people from the shelter still escorted them to the Jiaowu port. From the port, it was another dozen or so kilometers by snowmobile to where the fleet was anchored. Here, the sea was deeper, so it hadn't completely frozen over. The Golden Wind icebreaker had already been towed out by men sent by Chen Jingguan. On deck, the entire crew stood ready, dressed in their uniforms. Zhang Yi said goodbye to his family, reminding them to be vigilant and pay attention to their safety while he was gone. If they encountered any danger, they were to contact him and Zhu Zhen immediately. After settling all the miscellaneous matters, he led Shukir and Zhu Yun aboard the ship. Zhang Yi and Shukir were unburdened, carrying nothing, as all their supplies were stored in the spatial dimension. Zhu Yun, however, was not so fortunate. Although she had tried her best to minimize her luggage, she still had to haul 2 enormous suitcases. Zhang Yi had no intention of helping her. It was the kind-hearted Uncle Yu who helped load her luggage. Once at the port, sailors naturally helped carry it onto the ship. Once on deck, Xu Yun took out her communicator in front of Zhang Yi and spoke to the person on the other end. Uncle, we have boarded the ship. We can set sail today. Zhang Yi chuckled to himself. Xu Yun was doing this intentionally as a show of force, to let him know that she had Zhu Zhen backing her. Zhang Yi paid it no mind and ordered Old Tian to weigh anchor. The sailors returned to their positions, and Old Tian skillfully commanded the anchor to be raised. The colossal icebreaker began to move, crushing the thin layer of ice around it as it headed out to sea. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi led Shukir to their room. The ship's heating was always on, making it very warm inside. This was one of Zhang Yi's requirements. Even though they were on a long journey, their quality of life was not to be compromised, at least in terms of heating and food, which had to be satisfactory. For him, these things were easy to arrange. Whether it was fuel for the heating system or food, his spatial dimension had more than enough storage. Of course, he had requisitioned it all from Zhu Zhen for the mission. Why would he pay for it himself? The following days were a stretch of monotonous sailing. Old Tian and the others had years of seafaring experience, especially after the apocalypse when they had sailed long distances with Wei Dinghe. Therefore, they knew which sea routes were dangerous. Before departing, Zhang Yi had told them not to rush and to stick to the safest possible route. First, they had to avoid routes known for pirates. Next, they were not to go near the waters close to Neon, as that area was infested with wandering bandits who engaged in both piracy and highway robbery. Secondly, they had to be mindful of areas where sea beasts appeared. Since they were not short on food or energy, there was no need to worry about being at sea for an extended period. Safety was the primary principle, which Old Tian and the others were naturally happy to follow. They had the top superhuman of the Jianan region with them, and a space ability user at that. Sailing with Zhang Yai made them feel incredibly secure and proud. It was a story they could boast about to their children in the future, that they had once been on a mission with Zhang Yai. For the first half of the month, the journey was uneventful. After all, the waters they traversed were within the maritime territory of Huaxia, and they only needed to inform the naval patrol of the East Sea region. However, after leaving Huaxia's waters, trouble began to arise. On the 17th day of their voyage, the Golden Wind had to pass through the maritime territory of Nian. Old Tian came to Zhang Ye to ask if they should contact the other party's maritime management department to avoid any misunderstandings. Zhang Ye was reading a book. Hearing this, he closed it and said, "No need. Just sail straight through. If someone tries to block our way, we'll deal with it then." Zhang Ye had his reasons for this decision. After the apocalypse, the populations of all countries had plummeted, and their military and defense forces had suffered severe losses. Even a nation like Huaxia couldn't control all of its surrounding waters. This meant the oceans were gradually becoming lawless territory. Nihon itself was divided into two major factions, and its navy was likely unstable. Their coast guard had few ships and defensive equipment, so they weren't a major concern. Proactively contacting them might arouse suspicion. If any problems arose, he could just have Zhu Zheng negotiate with them. Old Tian received Zhang Ye's orders and left. A few hours later, they indeed received a warning from the Nihon Coast Guard. Zhang Ye instructed Old Tian to inform them that they were a civilian vessel, not a warship, passing through to rescue people. He also contacted Zhu Zheng to have someone negotiate with the Nihon Coast Guard. Although the tone of the Nihon Coast Guard was somewhat hostile, they currently lacked the capability to fully manage their own waters, so they had no choice but to let Zhang Ye and his group pass. After resolving the issue, Zhang Ye continued to read in his room. But unexpectedly, just as they were leaving the waters of Nihon, a loud explosion suddenly echoed around them. The ship's hull began to shake violently, startling Jukir. A glint flashed in Zhang Ye's eyes. He patted Jukir's shoulder and said, "Don't worry, I am here. I'll go out and see what's happening." In an instant, he appeared in the icebreaker's control room. Old Tian and the sailors had all drawn their weapons, staring angrily at the radar screen and cursing. Zhang Ye noticed many small red dots appearing on the radar. "What's going on?" Seeing Zhang Ye suddenly appear, the crew's spirits were lifted. "Mr. Zhang, this area has been mined. We've probably run into pirates," Old Tian said with a grim expression, taking a drag from his cigarette. "It must have been those Nihonese bastards. They saw us off and then immediately tipped off the nearby pirates." A cold, amused smile formed on Zhang Ye's lips. "How's the hull?" "It's fine. Our ship is very sturdy. But these mines are just to block our path. The pirate ships are already closing in on us," Old Tian said, pointing to a dozen red dots approaching on the radar screen. Zhang Ye said calmly, "You all stay here and control the ship. I'll handle things outside." As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished. The sailors knew Zhang Ye was going to deal with the enemy, but they didn't want to sit idly by. Half of them grabbed their guns and headed to the deck. Zhang Ye stepped out onto the deck. Just as Old Tian had said, a dozen small boats were speeding towards the Golden Wind from all directions. Each boat carried 3 or 4 men, all armed with guns and rocket launchers. Zhang Ye leaned against the railing. A few pirates on the other side spotted him and immediately started shouting. Through his translation system, Zhang Ye heard them yell, "Stop the ship, don't resist, and we might let you live." The distinct Nihonese accent was slightly grating. There was no doubt these were the pirates colluding with the Nihon Coast Guard. Judging by their coordinated approach, this was far from their first time. Any civilian ship passing through Nihon's waters would be immediately ambushed like this. A cruel smile appeared on Zhang Ye's lips. He flipped his hand, and a rocket launcher appeared from his spatial dimension. But after a moment's thought, he decided against using such a toy to sink these pathetic boats. Instead, Zhang Ye switched to his sacred blade. "Hey, you over there, did you hear me? Are you scared shitless? Stop the ship and surrender now," a scar-faced Nihonese man wearing a cap shouted arrogantly, raising his axe and pointing it directly at Zhang Ye. In response, Zhang Ye simply leaped up. His body felt impossibly light. With a gentle push of his toes on the railing, he launched himself from the ship, over 10 meters high, and soared down towards the pirate motorboats on the sea below. Black void power clung to the body of the blade. Only the hardest metal in the world could withstand such terrifying strength. It was incredibly refined. At this moment, Zhang Ye's grasp of spatial power had far surpassed what it was initially. The Nihon pirates on the motorboat didn't even have time to react before a blade slashed down from the sky, transforming into a blade aura curved like a crescent moon. Crack! The motorboat was split in two right down the middle, the cut surface as smooth as a mirror. Splash! The bisected hull sank straight into the ice floe. The Nihon pirates on the boat screamed in terror. Falling into seawater at this temperature meant certain death. Moreover, before dying, they would get to experience the sensation of their bodies turning into blocks of ice. After Jun Yai cut one speedboat apart, his figure quickly vanished in midair, reappearing a moment later above another one. It was still a simple, unadorned slash, splitting that speedboat into two. As well. Repeating the process, 3 more speedboats were sunk in the blink of an eye. The Nihon pirates on the boats fell into the water, wailing in panic and begging their comrades for help. But before the other pirates could come to their rescue, their bodies, having been in the sea for a short time, had already frozen solid, their skin turning a purplish blue. They looked terrifying, like zombies. This way of death was exceptionally gruesome, which was Jiang Ye's goal. Simply blowing them up would be letting these beasts, who had killed countless innocent people in these waters, off too lightly. He's awakened, the pirates finally realized something was wrong. They had run into a tough one today. However, born vicious, they were determined to kill Jiang Yi at any cost. All kinds of weapons were aimed at him, from machine guns to rockets. Even so, they couldn't keep up with Jiang Yi's movements at all. He was like a phantom, vanishing and reappearing in mid-air. In a flash. The fools even ended up hitting their own comrades' ships. Although a few bullets occasionally managed to touch Jiang Yi, they were all absorbed by his spatial ability. Jiang Yi was like a dragonfly skimming the water, moving step by step, only sinking the ships without directly taking the lives of the Nihon pirates. He wanted them to fall into the icy sea, to let them savor the cold despair as they neared death. By this time, the sailors had rushed up, but surprisingly, Zhu Yun had also come to the deck to observe the situation. They then witnessed Jiang Yi's leisurely and comfortable method of killing. More than a dozen boats were sunk by Jiang Yi as easily as flipping his hand. They could even hear the desperate cries for help from the Nihon pirates floundering in the ice. Help me, help me. But these cries didn't last long, quickly swallowed by the azure ice sea. The sailors on deck looked at each other and smiled. Someone even scratched his head helplessly. They hadn't even had a chance to fire a single shot. In the end, Jiang Yi solved everything himself. That was the advantage of having a strong person in the group. Zhu Yun watched Jiang Yi's figure, a strange light in her eyes. Actually, it's not so bad to find a man who can protect you. Although his manners are so, though, I suppose I can barely accept it. Jiang Yi returned to the deck and said coolly to the crowd, continue forward. It's not surprising that we ran into pirates. There might be others who will try to block our way next, but with me here, we are completely safe. Jiang Yi paid the matter no mind. But when Zhu Yun returned to her room, she used her personal communication device to report the incident in detail to Zhu Zhang. No. Encountering pirates in international waters makes it difficult to use this opportunity to make a big deal out of it. With Jiang Yi there, you don't need to worry about your safety. Zhu Zhen looked at Zhu Yun with a serious expression. However, how are you progressing with the mission I gave you? Zhu Yun paused, her voice slightly aggrieved. He brought his girlfriend along. Since boarding the ship, he eats all his meals in his own room. I have no opportunity to get close to him. The weather was too cold, so everyone tried to avoid appearing on deck, even eating where it was convenient. Jiang Yi prepared his own food, so he didn't crowd into the canteen with old Tian and the others. But Zhu Yun didn't receive such good treatment. She ate canned and processed food like the rest of the crew. Hearing this, Xu Zheng said sternly, think of more ways. Do I have to teach you how to do it? You must learn to rely on your own abilities to get things done, shouldn't you? Zhu Yun pouted and said, the circumstances are good right now. But then, he didn't cut her off. What's wrong? Are the circumstances never good wherever you go? You're the one who ruins the circumstances. Stop acting like a spoiled princess all the time. Be proactive. Zhu Yun reluctantly agreed, but she felt a little wrong. She opened her phone and looked at her face from left to right. How am I any worse than Shukir? Why won't he try to win me over? Zhu Yun couldn't understand it. The main thing was, her looks weren't as good as Shukir's, her figure wasn't as beautiful, and her temperament wasn't as good either. Other than that, how was she inferior to Shukir? The Jinfeng left the sea area. A few hours later, another ship approached and discovered the frozen corpses. Physics is a wonderful thing. Frozen corpses float on the water's surface. The people on the ship saw that these bodies were still intact, meaning they didn't die from gunfire but drowned after falling into the water. But how exactly does one make a group of pirates, who are skilled swimmers, freeze to death in the icy ocean? And where were their speedboats? It seems there is a very powerful awakened on that ship, the leader of the pirate organization said cautiously from the bow of his ship. That's a ship from the Huasi nation. Their people rarely leave the southern seas. For them to come this far is very strange. The person next to him said, this is very odd, but it's not something we can handle. The difference in our strength compared to the Huasi nation is too great. We can pass this information to the Colombian forces. They will definitely be interested in this news. Having made their decision, the pirates dared not pursue the Golden Wind. Instead, they returned to Nihon Island and relayed the information to the forces stationed on Shenzhen Island. Nihon, Shenzhen Island. Since the last century, the Colombian Far Seas Fleet had been stationed here, with a total garrison of 50,000 troops. Although not a large number, in the context of modern warfare, this force, relying on their advanced aircraft carriers and warships, was an existence that no one in the Great Ocean region dared to ignore. After the Ice Age arrived, the entire Nihon archipelago fell into a severe ice-related panic. The lower-class citizens lacked food and clothing, and most froze or starved to death. However, the Colombian Far Seas Fleet always enjoyed a prosperous life because, according to the agreement between Nihon and Colombia, the supply of food for the fleet had to be guaranteed. Thus, it was a grim irony. The death rate of civilians on Shenzhen Island reached 90, yet very few in the Far Seas Fleet died from the cold or hunger. Even their discarded food scraps fed a significant number of the local population. This scene was reminiscent of a century ago. Because the Ice Age had made travel between the Far Seas Fleet and the Colombian mainland across the ocean inconvenient, the fleet had transformed into a local warlord power. The relationship between the fleet and the High Command in Colombia was ambiguous. Although they nominally followed the orders of the Colombian High Command, they had a great deal of autonomy in the Great Ocean region. The commander of the Colombian Far Seas Fleet, 5-star General Douglas, had become the de facto emperor of the area. Today, the communications department of the Far Seas Fleet received a call from the Nihon Maritime Department, forwarding information about the discovery of a Hoaxian icebreaker, heading towards the southern seas. This news naturally attracted the attention of the Far Seas Fleet. As their most powerful rival in the region, any maritime action by Hoaxia after the apocalypse drew their notice. Therefore, the news was reported up the chain of command until it reached the desk of Colonel Khan, commander of the 50th Combined Fleet. After reviewing the intelligence, Khan took the matter very seriously. After the Ice Age began, all nations have been struggling to survive. Maintaining basic operations within their own territories is already extremely difficult. So why would a civilian vessel from Hoaxia be sailing so far from home? How do they solve the problem of supplies on their journey? His aide, Lieutenant Chundu, leaned forward and asked, should we intercept them? Conduct a thorough inspection. Khan frowned, deep in thought. In international waters, arbitrarily stopping a civilian vessel from Hoaxia would certainly cause a major dispute. Currently, the Far Seas Fleet was operating independently overseas, and the global situation was delicate. They did not want to provoke a conflict with Hoaxia. If a real war broke out, Hoaxia could easily destroy their carrier battle group. Khan carefully reviewed the intelligence in his hand. Information on the Golden Wind was easy to find. After all, it was one of the most advanced icebreakers in the world, and all its details were on record. Before the apocalypse, it was a private vessel owned by a couple who loved to travel the world. After the apocalypse, it fell into the hands of some armed organization in Tianhai City. A civilian ship. It couldn't be carrying many weapons. Khan thought for a long time before finally making a decision. Let it be. It's just a civilian ship, it poses no threat to us. However, we must continuously monitor its position. Report to me immediately if you detect anything unusual. Yes, Colonel. Chun Du accepted the order and left to instruct the Reconnaissance Department to monitor the ship's movements. In reality, even if they had boarded the ship for an inspection right now, they wouldn't have found anything. The biggest secret of Zhang Ye's mission was a certain person on Yanlu Island, or rather, the valuable knowledge inside that person's head. Therefore, Zhang Yi was prepared to be stopped and questioned on his journey. Aside from pirates, Zhang Yi wasn't afraid of encountering these ragtag military forces. Chun Du went to the Reconnaissance Department. This place was responsible for the radar and satellite surveillance of the entire naval base. They could receive signals from over half the ocean. Chun Du found the head of the department, Major Harrison, and gave him the task of monitoring the Golden Wind. Major Harrison said confidently, rest assured. As long as they are moving within these waters, they cannot escape our sight. But Chun Du added, unless they use military-grade cloaking devices. But that would also mean they are not a civilian ship, but a private vessel on a special mission for Hoaxia. A knowing smile appeared on both of their faces. If that were the case, the situation would develop differently. As they were talking, Chun Du's eyes glanced at a stack of A4 paper nearby, filled with characters and English. Are there still so many messages like this these days? He asked. He picked up a sheet. On it was written, we have been trapped in Mull for half a year. I beg you to quickly send a warship to protect us, otherwise the pirates here will sooner or later turn us into smoked meat. For the love of God, save us. Signed, President of Edu Shipbuilding Company, Jackman Brick. Harrison laughed mockingly. These rich people. They managed to survive the apocalypse, and now they expect us to go and save them. It's laughable. They still don't understand how people with minds like that could climb to such high positions. After the apocalypse, long-distance sea voyages had become incredibly difficult. Only major powers could bear the cost. First, one needed a ship sturdy enough to deal with the ubiquitous pirates and the sea monsters of the deep. Secondly, the extreme difficulty of transporting fuel also made the Navy reluctant to deploy warships casually. After the apocalypse, hundreds of thousands of Colombian citizens living in the deep sea region had applied to them for aid. But the naval commander, Douglas, gave only one reply: pray to God, not to the Navy. After dealing with the pirates, Zhang Yi's ship continued its journey towards the remote lava flow island. It wasn't until they reached international waters that Zhang Yi more clearly understood why Zhu Zhang had insisted on him carrying out this mission. A long sea voyage was both monotonous and dangerous. It required a captain who could both carry a large amount of supplies and fight, in order to bring a civilian vessel to Lava Flow Island, 3,700 km away. That first contact with the Nihon was just a prelude. The Jin Feng sailed for another 7 days. To avoid dangerous deep sea areas, Old Tan had been navigating along the edge of the continental shelf. Shortly after entering a new sea region, they were surrounded by hundreds of ships, large and small. The Jin Feng was tightly encircled by the flotilla. The front, back, left, and right were all blocked, leaving them no room to escape. The ships were a motley collection, including both Coast Guard vessels and civilian fishing boats. The people on them wore all sorts of clothing and were of all shapes and sizes, a truly mixed bag. After surrounding the Jin Feng, two all gunmen with brown skin, wearing thick cotton coats, stepped out from a Coast Guard ship. Each held a machine gun, and one of them raised a megaphone and shouted at the ship. Old Tyan calmly put on his bulletproof vest and ordered the sailors, armed with rifles and riot shields, to go on deck. He began to communicate with them in the local dialect. People on the ship, come ashore immediately. We are coming aboard to inspect, shouted the man who looked like he was from a military organization. Old Tyan showed no fear. We are a ship from the Jiao Wu organization of Tianhai City. Get out of our way at once. Previously, the Jiao Wu organization had roamed these seas and built up a bit of a reputation. This wasn't the first time he had encountered a situation like this. Right after the apocalypse, people had turned into grassroots bandits. As soon as you passed through their waters, you were certain to be stuck. At best, they would rob everything on the ship. Yes, everything: the ship, the cargo, and even the people. Strong men would be kept as slaves, weaker ones would be butchered for food. Women were used to satisfy their lust. Therefore, at a time like this, one could not hope for a peaceful resolution. Old Tan wanted to use the reputation of the Jiao Wu organization to scare them off, hoping it would make them back down. But this place was too far from the Husi nation, and these ignorant bandits had no regard for the Jiao Wu organization. Immediately, one of the bandits opened fire, shooting directly at the ship. The sound of machine gun bullets clattered against the hull. Old Tan cursed angrily, raised his weapon, and returned fire. The weapons they were equipped with had all been supplied by Zhang Ye, providing ample firepower. Besides standard rifles, they also had Gatling guns and various types of rocket launchers. These sailors were not just simple crewmen, they were formerly elite soldiers in the Tianhai Navy. Anyone who could survive until now was a formidable fighter. While they might not be a match for an awakened, the bandits' weapons were far inferior by comparison. Some of them were even armed with meat cleavers and spears. Old Tan and the others unleashed a barrage of bullets. This was Zhang Ye's prior instruction: do not spare ammunition in a fight. After all, it was all taken from the armory of the Jiangnan Greater Region. A moment later, the dozen or so sailors on the Jin Feng began to open fire. Old Tan personally went to the bow, opened a hatch, and a heavy Gatling machine gun was rolled out. It had a thick metal shield in front, and a massive barrel with more than a dozen rotating barrels. Old Tan roared, and unleashed a torrent of bullets at the dozens of small boats in front of them. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat, the sound of the gun was like a rattlesnake's warning, and blue flames danced at the muzzle. In an instant, large caliber bullets carrying immense kinetic energy struck the boats and the pirates. In a flash, flesh and shattered hulls flew everywhere. Both people and boats seemed to be made of paper, completely unable to withstand such powerful destruction. The sea quickly turned red, and the pirates screamed in agony, hastily trying to flee. Old Tan did not give chase. He pulled a cigarette from his pocket, lit it, and gave an order. Let's go. The icebreaker plowed through the wreckage of the broken boats, and the bodies of the pirates, continuing on its way. The reason for the haste was that, as a rule, killing pirates would certainly provoke retaliation. For his own safety, Old Tyan still went to report to Zhang Yi. We might be in trouble. We may need you to step in. Zhang Yi said nonchalantly, it's fine. Let's wait for them to show up. Indeed, just as Old Tyan had said, less than half an hour later, the sound of earth-shaking cannons suddenly echoed from the shore. More than a dozen coastal defense artillery pieces aimed at the Jin Feng, and began to bombard it fiercely. But as the shells approached the Jin Feng, they didn't destroy the hull but were instead swallowed by Zhang Yi's spatial ability. The path ahead was also blocked by two old warships. Zhang Yi appeared at the bow. Without a word, he unleashed a full counter-attack, firing back the volley of shells he had just absorbed. Boom, boom, On the coast, the old coastal defense artillery positions were all blown to smithereens. The pirates manning those giant cannons were blown up like fireworks, scattering in countless bright sparks. The terrified pirates screamed, "That's not a civilian ship. It's a warship. It's a warship." They mistakenly thought the Jin Feng also had cannons. The two warships on the sea also began to attack with powerful fire. Although they were old, the power of their main cannons was still terrifying. A fierce volley of shells was aimed directly at the bow of the Jin Feng. A mocking look appeared in Jiang Yi's eyes, and a spark of anger began to spread. His spatial ability swallowed all the cannonball attacks and then fired them back exactly as they had come. Boom, boom, boom. The warships, struck by their own cannonballs, were quickly battered and torn apart. However, this attack wasn't enough to sink the sturdy warships. Dealing with them like this was too slow. Jiang Yi's temper flared. He drew his blade, and with just a few swift steps through the air, he was already on the upper deck of one of the warships. Once aboard, he saw several short, brown-skinned scum, holding machine guns and rocket launchers, staring at him in a mixture of fear, amazement, and curses in their native language. Swish! With a single slash, Jiang Yi sliced 8 pirates in half at the waist. The pirates behind them were scared to death by Jiang Yi's move and frantically pulled their triggers, trying to kill him. However, their bullets flew into Jiang Yi like pebbles into the sea, having no effect whatsoever. Jiang Yi casually swung his blade back, sending all of them to their deaths. I have to wipe out all of these pirates. The decision was made quickly in Jiang Yi's mind. He would have to pass through these waters again on his way back. If he let them go now, they would surely seek revenge. He didn't want to create trouble for himself. Eradicating the weeds by the root was the best solution. Holding his blade, Jiang Yi moved from the bow to the stern, from the deck to the hold, slaughtering them all. Previously, whenever he faced an awakened opponent, he had to fight hard to win. But these pirates were almost all ordinary people, and even if there were awakened among them, they were of a very low level. Wherever he passed, people died. His conscience felt no guilt for slaughtering these pirates. Because after entering the ship's hold, he saw people who had been skinned and hung upside down everywhere. Some had been dismembered, with only white skeletons remaining. These pirates had lost all humanity. Kill, kill, kill. Jiang Yi showed no mercy to the pirates and would kill anyone he saw. He went from room to room, cleaning them out. He was determined to eliminate this evil to its root. Not a single pirate here would survive today. The pirates were terrified and tried to resist, but they couldn't even touch a single hair on Jiang Yi's head before they were all cut to pieces. Bang! Jiang Yi shattered a door with a swing of his blade, then kicked it open. The room inside was pitch black, the air filled with a foul smell, and the floor was covered in waste. In the corner of the room, he saw 5 or 6 women locked up with iron chains. Their bodies were covered in grime, and the light had completely faded from their eyes. Jiang Yi frowned, casually cut the chains on them with his blade, and then turned to leave. Whether they could survive next was up to their own fate. But just as he stepped out of the room, a new idea sparked in his mind. Just as he was about to step out of the room, a new idea struck him. He turned back and adjusted the intelligent voice system to the local language, then spoke to the women. Do you know where those bastards' lair is? The women looked at the chains that had bound them, now broken. They simply huddled together in fear, staring blankly at Jiang Yi, and did not answer his question. Jiang Yi asked again, I am here to help you kill those degenerates. If you tell me where they are, I can help you get your revenge. He thought for a moment, then took out 2 large bags of bread from his spatial dimension and placed them on the ground. You can eat this. At the sight of food, a desperate craving appeared in some of the women's eyes, and they scrambled forward. They didn't care who Jiang Yi was, they began to frantically tear at the bread, fighting over it. Jiang Yi took 2 steps back, not wanting the filth on their bodies to stain his clothes. After all, they were covered in their own waste. I'll ask again, where is their lair? Do you know? One woman curiously looked up, chewing on a piece of bread as she stared at Jiang Yi. She giggled foolishly. No lair, no lair. Everyone has become a ghost. There are no good people. This statement made Jiang Yi fully understand the situation of this small nation. It was a country with a small population and a lack of resources. After the apocalypse arrived, everyone had gone mad. They were either eaten or became cannibals. On this island, all the survivors were members of the pirate crew. Then do you know where the largest group of them is? Jiang Yi asked patiently. The woman's eyes rolled, a clear sign that her mind had long since broken. She thought for a long time, then smiled and said, General Baocha. General Baocha has the most people. He rules this entire island. Thank you, you understand now. Jiang Yi left the boat and moved to another, carrying out the same cleansing. Xu Yun's voice came through the communicator. Mr. Zhang, after we've cleared out these pirates, we should leave this place quickly. There's no need for a massacre. Otherwise, it will be easy for others to use this as an excuse to attack us. Old Tian's voice came over another channel. Mr. Zhang, what are your orders? Zhuge also asked about the situation outside. Jiang Yi opened the public channel, pulling them all into the conversation. The pirates on this island must be completely eliminated. Otherwise, they will become a problem for us on our return journey. Xu Yung suddenly sounded anxious. Jiang Yi, doing this could very well cause an international dispute. Jiang Yi replied coldly, the moment they attacked our ship, they were sentenced to death. Also, Miss Chu, let me remind you, this is the apocalypse. Xu Yung said calmly, Jiang Yi, I know you're very agitated right now, but please calm down first. We are on a secret mission. It is not suitable to be too high profile. Now that we've killed the pirates who blocked our way, shouldn't we just leave quickly? Jiang Yi, already intent on slaughter, retorted, you're thinking too simply. If we deliberately show restraint, it will actually seem more abnormal and make people more suspicious. What's so unreasonable about an icebreaker on a long voyage having a powerful expert on board for protection? Being blocked by pirates and killing them in retaliation is a normal response. The more silent we are, the more people will suspect we have something to hide. Ignoring Xu Yun's advice, he gave an order to Old Tan. You and your men stay on the ship, armed and ready for battle. If you see anyone on that island holding a weapon, open fire immediately. No need to distinguish their identity. There are no decent people left among the survivors on this island. With that, Jiang Yi, holding his sacred blade, teleported several times and arrived on the island of the South Chu Nation. From a great distance, he could see people furtively scouting the area. It was clear his methods had terrified them. They didn't dare to act, only watch him from afar. It wouldn't be long before General Baoka's men arrived. Jiang Yi pulled out a standard Desert Eagle and fired a few shots, taking out the watching lackeys from 1,000 meters away. Finding General Baoka's nest was incredibly easy. Since the entire island was covered in snow, all he had to do was follow the tracks left by people and vehicles. Jiang Yi didn't need to use his Janus's bullets, nor did he need to determine whether the people on the island were pirates or civilians. From the moment the Golden Wind was attacked, from the moment he saw the women imprisoned on the ships, he had decided to level this island. Gunshots thundered across the island as dozens of gang members, armed with guns, charged out from the snow, shouting in their native language and firing wildly at Jiang Yi. Good, saves me the trouble of wasting bullets. Jiang Yi waved his right hand, and all the bullets flying toward him were absorbed into his spatial dimension. The next moment, those same bullets were returned with the speed of a rainstorm. Thwip, 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 thwip. The bullets tore through their cotton-padded clothes and shredded their bodies. One of them pulled out a grenade launcher, thinking his firepower wasn't strong enough. The result was that the rocket flew out, only to be turned around and sent right back at them. 7 or 8 men were blown to bits on the spot, showering the area with gore and viscera. The small nation of South Chuo had only a few 100,000 people to begin with. After the apocalypse, the number of survivors dwindled to just over 10,000. The entire population had turned into a gang, specializing in robbing ships that passed through their waters. They normally had no opportunity to interact with high-level superhumans. The few superhumans in their gang were worshipped like gods. Therefore, Zheng's abilities sent them into a state of absolute shock. Several gang members were so terrified they wet themselves, dropping to their knees and kowtowing, begging for their lives. Jiang Yi didn't hesitate for a second. He aimed for their heads and opened fire, killing them all. He advanced, slaughtering the entire group. In just over 10 minutes, he had killed 700 or 800 people. The depths of the island concealed countless dangers, with traps laid everywhere. But to Jiang Yi, they were meaningless. He flew into the sky, ignoring all their attacks. His target was the most distinctive structure on the island, a silver-white palace, the very lair of General Baoka. As Jiang Yi descended upon the palace, he discovered the island's formal military force. Unlike the pirates he had encountered earlier, these men were clad in standard Shu military uniforms, and the weapons in their hands were far more advanced. Seeing Jiang Yi fly down from the sky, they were all stunned. A man who looked like a captain finally raised his gun and shouted, "You there, halt, who are you? This is the territory of General Baoka of the South Chu Nation. Leave immediately, or our great General Baoka will bring divine punishment down upon you." Jiang Yi looked down at them and had a sudden urge to taunt them. "I was just robbed by your people. Don't you think you owe me an explanation?" The captain was taken aback. He wasn't quick-witted and didn't know how to respond. It was all a misunderstanding. You should leave now, and we can pretend this never happened. Jiang Yi sighed. But I can't pretend it never happened. Hovering in the air, he waved his right hand, and hundreds of grenades fell from his spatial dimension. The soldiers only saw countless small, dark objects raining down and didn't know what they were. It wasn't until the grenades landed at their feet that their expressions changed drastically. Run, boom, 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 boom. Hundreds of soldiers were blown to pieces on the spot. Inside the palace, the silver-haired General Baoka, dressed in an ornate white military uniform, watched the scene with a grim face. Where did this fool come from, daring to cause trouble on my territory? He must have a death wish. A few of his personal guard captains spoke up hastily. General, we can't let him continue this slaughter. He has already killed so many of our men. This will seriously affect our business. Another added, that's right. Without manpower, how are we supposed to raid ships in the future? General Baoka snorted coldly. If we're short on men, we can just go and capture more from somewhere else. But it is time for me to act. He would show this intruder that the god of the South Chuan nation was not to be trifled with. As he finished speaking, General Baoka tensed his body. His right foot, clad in a military boot, stumped down hard. The ground instantly shattered, and then, like an arrow released from a bow, he shot towards Zhang Yi. His surrounding subordinates watched his retreating back with looks of adoration. The general was a god, an undefeated god. Crash! General Baoka landed on the ground, blocking Zhang Yi's path into the courtyard. He was about 45 years old, with a ruthless glint in his eyes and a powerful physique that strained against the seams of his uniform. Invader, for breaking into my palace and killing my men, you will pay with your life. Zhang Yi walked right past him. The edge of his sacred blade descended gently. A moment later, a head tumbled onto the snow-covered ground. Everyone in the palace stared, their mouths agape in disbelief. The scene had unfolded too suddenly. They had expected their god, the #1 expert General Baoka, to deal with Zhang Yi easily. But what had just happened? Zhang Yi stepped inside and saw a trembling soldier. Where is your general? Zhang Yi asked coldly. The soldier blankly pointed at the headless body on the ground. That's him. The one you just killed. Zhang Yi paused for a moment and scratched his head. They've gotten so used to killing that I overdid it. I forgot to question him first. Back in Jiannan, he had fought against so many powerful superhumans that coming to this tiny territory was like a high-level player visiting a novice village. He still haven't adjusted. Well then, all of you can die too. Zhang Yi swung his sacred blade, and the unstable matter, like a shadowy flame, began to spread from the tip, coalescing into a black serpent dozens of meters long. With a gentle swing of the blade, the serpent shot forward, piercing through one soldier's chest before rapidly moving to the next. 1, 2, 3. 10, 20. Within seconds, every soldier in the entire courtyard had been impaled, leaving gaping holes in their chests. Desperate, sorrowful screams finally echoed from within the palace. They were the cries of General Baoka's subordinates and concubines. Compared to the common gang members outside, they were dressed handsomely, even lavishly. General Baoka's harem was vast and colorful. Zhang Yi flew into the air, holding his blade. He looked down at the sprawling palace. He didn't need to guess to know there were certainly many secret chambers inside, designed to allow the general to escape. Not bothering to search room by room, Zhang Yi channeled an immense amount of dark matter energy into his blade. It transformed into a colossal serpent, which he then brought down in a powerful slash across the fortress. A whirl-shaking explosion followed. The entire fortress was split in two, revealing a chasm dozens of meters deep. Deep below, he could see a pit filled with bleached bones. The skeletons were piled high, clearly having been there for a very long time. The collapsing structure also revealed a storeroom. This was their food pantry, and it was filled with human corpses. There were no vegetables or rice to be seen, only what could be described as white meat. There was also a treasury filled with gold, silver, and jewelry. Diamonds, brand name watches, and various weapons were scattered everywhere, a collection of treasures plundered from all over the world. By General Baoka. Zhang Yi thought for a moment. Wanting to make full use of everything, he collected it all. After Zhang Yi's sweep, the entire palace was left empty. He didn't leave a single valuable item behind. The women from the ship's hold had said this island was full of demons, and not a single person was innocent. Zhang Yi looked at the wives of General Baoka. They were kneeling on the ground, begging for their lives, even proactively offering to serve him. Zhang Yi looked at their fresh makeup and delicate faces and sighed. You look so prim and proper, just like actresses. But your hands are stained with the blood of the innocent, aren't they? One woman's eyes widened, and she shouted in Chinese, No, I haven't, I've never killed anyone. She realized that Zhang Yi intended to kill everyone here. Zhang Yi smiled. He wasn't a judge and didn't need to preside over a trial, so there was no need to waste time finding evidence. To live in hell and claim you are not a demon, who are he trying to fool? Most importantly, Zhang Yi had revealed his abilities here. His whereabouts could be exposed, so no one could be left alive. Dark matter energy surged, instantly consuming them all. Not even dust remained, their bodies were disintegrated into the smallest particles. Holding his blade, Zhang Yi slowly walked away from the ruins. He didn't leave immediately but hovered in the sky above the city. He had said that in this den of thieves, this nation of crime, not a single life would be allowed to exist, except for the captives. Zhang Yi spent 2 hours on this island of the South Chuan nation, cleaning out every pirate he could find. Besides them, He also found several other captive women. Like the women in the ship's hold, they were all chained up, used as playthings for the pirates. As for the men on the ships they had plundered, they had all been killed and turned into food. For humanitarian purposes, Zhang Yai incinerated all the corpses he found, considering it a way to grant them peace. However, he could do nothing more for these women than leave them some food. In their current state, even if he freed them, they would have a hard time surviving. But that didn't mean there weren't a few with a strong will to live. By this time, Xu Yung had come ashore. She reported the incident to her uncle, Xu Zheng. The instruction Xu Zheng gave was that throughout the voyage, all decisions were to be made by Zhang Yai. As long as it didn't lead to conflict with major powers, Xu Yung was not to interfere. But when it came to dealing with the captive women, Xu Yung was adamant. We can't just leave them here. If we do, they will still die. She looked at Zhang Yai with a determined gaze. We can take them on the ship and bring them back to the Jiangnan region. After all, you have so many supplies, bringing a few more people along would be no problem. Zhang Yai's eyes widened as he stared at Xu Yung in disbelief. He had thought these sanctimonious types only existed on the internet. He never expected the young lady of Blizzard City to be one as well. Do you have any idea how much trouble bringing these women on board would cause us? Zhang Yai retorted with a frown. Do you even know what kind of people they are? If we let them on the ship, what if our mission gets exposed? But Xu Yung looked at him seriously and said, under any circumstances, human life is the most important thing. I cannot bear to abandon so many lives. They are living, breathing people. She stepped forward, staring intently at Zhang Yai. You have to know that if you abandon them, they will die. From her eyes, Zhang Yai realized a truth. This woman was being serious. He suddenly remembered that Xu Yung had always studied abroad, so her head was full of Western ideals. Zhang Yai admitted that if he were one of the captives, he would love to meet a woman like Xu Yung. But unfortunately, he wasn't, and furthermore, he was not a kind person. He was just an ordinary, selfish person. Faced with Xu Yung's question, Zhang Yai laughed coldly in his heart. He opened his mouth and retorted, Miss Chu is right. Your nobility is truly admirable. But I want to ask, when the apocalypse first struck, where are the 15 million people of Jinling now? Why are there less than 2 million left? And what about the many elderly who couldn't work and were driven out to fend for themselves? Zhang Yai's eyes were filled with mockery. Back then, where was the benevolent Miss Chu and her kind heart? Zhang Yai's words made Xu Yung's face flush red. In Blizzard City, it wasn't my place to speak. But that was a special situation. Blizzard City didn't have the resources to support so many people. It's different now. You have enough supplies for them to live, Zhang Yai countered. Why should I? It's true I have a lot of supplies, but if I were to share them, I would share them with my own compatriots, not a group of foreign strangers. Miss Chiu, put away that cheap pity of yours. This is the apocalypse. Zhang Yai looked at the women huddled in their filthy blankets, and sighed internally. He took out enough food from his spatial dimension to last them for a week, then turned and walked away. Xu Yung watched the women scrambling for the food, then looked helplessly at Zhang Yai. Without his consent, she couldn't save these people. The crew wouldn't listen to her. She shouted angrily at Zhang Yai, but what good does this do? You give them a little food to find some meager comfort for your own conscience. You know very well they are going to die. You know it, and you're just deceiving yourself. Hearing this, Zhang Yai suddenly burst out laughing. You're right. I left them food only to make my own conscience feel better. In reality, I don't care about them at all, because I don't possess a love for humanity so great that I can take care of every single person. Hypocrite, sanctimonious hypocrite. Zhang Yai couldn't care less about Xu Yung's opinion of him. He didn't think of himself as a great person, maybe even a little evil, so he didn't care about any evaluation. He pointed at her and asked mockingly, a gentleman is judged by his actions, not his heart. At least I did something to help them. And you, Miss Chiu, the great and benevolent Miss Chiu, what have you done? After that, in a fit of anger, Xu Yung left her own rations for the next 3 days. And Zhang Yai, to show his respect for her gesture, told the kitchen not to prepare food for her for 3 days. The golden wind continued its journey forward. Xu Yung, furious with Zhang Yai, locked herself in her room and refused to come out. Zhang Yai paid her no mind. After all, she wouldn't starve to death in 3 days. In contrast, Xiuqir tried to persuade him. She is Zhu Zheng's niece. After all, you're treating her like this. Aren't you afraid she'll complain to him? Zhang Yai said nonchalantly, Zhu Zheng isn't senile enough to alienate me over something like this. If they still had to worry about the moods of the powerful, then this apocalypse would have been for nothing. He smiled and stroked Xiuqir's fair little face. Don't worry. Right now, it's the people of Blizzard City who need me, not the other way around. Zhu Zheng's ability to sit firmly as the commander of the Jiangnan region was because Zhang Yai had decided to save him before, otherwise, he would have been killed by Gao Changkong long ago. Xiuqir smiled. I think it's still best to have a word with Uncle Zhu Zheng. It's better to be clear about some things. Even if he didn't say anything now, lingering conflicts could become troublesome later. Jiang Ye thought about it, and took Jiu Kir's advice. He took out his communicator to contact Jiu Zheng. So far out at sea, the signal was very poor, but fortunately, before setting off, he had specifically gone to headquarters to get a set of communication equipment. The Golden Wind also had an advance buoy relay station, the best in the world, so they didn't have to worry about the signal. Upon receiving Jiang Ye's report, Jiu Zheng laughed. "I've troubled you. This niece of mine is not bad by nature, she's just inexperienced, and doesn't understand the harsh realities of the world. I let her go with you precisely because I wanted you to teach her a good lesson. Just do as you see fit." After hearing Jiu Zheng's words, the last bit of worry in Jiang Ye's heart vanished. He was now acting on old Jiu's wishes. If Jiu Yun dared to act up, he could give her a spanking. Children who don't listen need a spanking. The heart of a great, kind person. Jiu Yun, holding compassion for all living beings in her heart, after a day of enduring hunger and thirst, finally decided to forgive Jiang Ye. She sat on her bed, hugging her knees and thinking for a moment, before painstakingly typing out a message to send to Jiang Ye. "Can we not fight like children anymore? Let's make up." At that moment, Jiang Ye was eating a fragrant, hot cheeseburger. With one bite, the juices flowed out. It was incredibly delicious. Seeing the message, Jiang Ye picked up his phone, glanced at it, and then casually tossed it on the table. A little while later, another message from Jiu Yun arrived. "If you don't reply, I'll take it as you've agreed. I'm so hungry, give me something to eat." Jiang Ye burst out laughing, almost spitting out the bite of burger in his mouth. He stared at the phone with a teasing expression and sent a voice message. "I already gave you food. Didn't you give that stuff to someone else?" Upon receiving the message, Jiu Yun's face darkened. She angrily threw her phone on the bed and lay down, clutching her stomach. Shukir came to Jiang Ye's side and said, "Are you really not going to give her anything to eat? It won't be good if she starves for 3 days and 3 nights. Jiang Ye's eyes were cold. Someone who has never starved will never know how to cherish food. She can't even endure 1 day of hunger, yet she has the nerve to criticize me for holding onto food tightly. This is the first lesson I'm teaching her." Shukir laughed. "If she keeps going without eating or drinking like this, she'll ruin her stomach. Just making her suffer a little is enough. We've only been gone for a few days. Are you really planning to fall out with her completely?" Jiang Ye thought about it and realized Shukir had a point, but teaching her a lesson was still necessary. He took out a bag of whole wheat bread and a bag of boiled chicken braised from his spatial dimension. Yes, this was a standard weight loss meal. "In 2 hours, you go give this food to her." Shukir found it amusing. To even finish this meal would be an admirable feat. Shukir brought the food over to Jiu Yun. At first, she was very happy, thinking that Jiang Ye wouldn't let her starve no matter what. But when she saw that the food was whole wheat bread and boiled chicken braised, her face turned ashen. The main point of a weight loss meal is that it's hard to eat. Especially whole wheat bread, even with water, it felt like it was stuck in her throat. "Jiang Ye is making me eat this?" Jiu Yun asked with wide, unbelieving eyes. Shukir smiled brightly and replied, "What's wrong? It's very healthy, isn't it?" Seeing her angry yet pathetic state, Shukir could see that tears were already welling up in the corners of Jiu Yun's eyes. Shukir said, "Jiu Yun, what I'm about to say is a bit unnecessary, but Jiang Ye's personality is just like that. He never listens to anyone, so when you're around him in the future, it's best not to go against his words too much." Jiu Yun bit her lip, tears streaming down her face. "But he can't bully me like this, can he?" Seeing that she was about to cry, Shukir quickly comforted her. "Don't be sad, this will all blow over in a few days. Don't cry, okay?" Hearing this, Jiu Yun immediately looked up and forced 2 laughs. "Don't worry, I won't cry." Shukir smiled to herself, then turned and left. After Shukir was gone, Jiu Yun closed the door, sat down on the floor, and sobbed. "Wow, that damn Jiang Ye, bullying me again." She looked at the food Shukir had brought, and a wave of anger rose in her heart. "I won't eat it." 10 minutes later, Jiu Yun was huddled in the corner of her bed, one hand holding a bottle of mineral water and chugging it, the other hand trying to eat the whole wheat bread, taking a large bite out of the boiled chicken brace. "This is disgusting." Waff, she finally finished the meal. Although the bread and boiled chicken braised almost made the young lady gag, at least her stomach was no longer empty. She left her room, intending to go outside for some fresh air and to see the icy scenery of the frozen sea. As she passed the cruise lounge, she suddenly smelled the scent of oil. It was the smell of roasted chicken. Old Tian saw Jiu Yun pass by and came over with a bright smile to greet her. "Jiu Yun, where are you heading?" Jiu Yun glanced into the room and vaguely saw a table full of food. Jiang Ye was never stingy with the people around him, especially on missions. If his subordinates ate well, they would work with more energy. "You guys have some good food, huh?" Jiu Yun said, feigning indifference. Afraid that old Tian would see the craving in her eyes, she turned her head away. Old Tian laughed heartily. "That's right, Mr. Zhang treats us so well. Back in Tianhe, we'd be lucky to eat dishes like these. Once a month. Now, it's a feast of fish and meat every day. It's delicious. As he spoke, he suddenly remembered that Zhu Yunque hadn't eaten anything for the past few days. He couldn't help but say, Zhu Yunque, you haven't eaten, have you? If you don't mind, come eat with us. Zhu Yunque almost nodded in agreement, but she couldn't. If she did, Zhang Yai would surely tease her about it for the rest of her life. Haha, I won't eat. Zhang Yai already gave me food. You don't think he'd be cruel enough to let me starve, do you? Zhu Yunque said stubbornly. Old Tian nodded. That's true. After all, you're a person from the greater region. How could Mr. Zhang mistreat you? Zhu Yunque couldn't help but ask, what are you guys eating today? Old Tian said with a smile, oh, just some roasted chicken, barbecue, grilled fish, and fries. Tears streamed down like rain in Zhu Yunque's heart. That damn Zhang Yai, the food he gives them is even better than what he gives me. Ah, what? I'm eating is the same, Zhu Yunque said stubbornly, turning her head and quickly leaving the place. The Jinfeng continued its journey on the sea. Unwittingly, 26 days had passed. According to the original plan, they could reach their destination after 28 days of sailing. But after truly setting sail, they discovered the situation was far worse than they had imagined. First, to avoid the dangerous deep sea regions, they had to take detours, and along the way, they were bound to encounter forces from other regions. They would clash with pirates, and even the navies of some nations. Furthermore, blizzards were frequent on the sea, which further hindered their progress. This was Zhang Ye's first time traveling so far by sea. On snowy nights, strong winds would rise, and the storm outside would roar like a monster, tossing the icebreaker up and down. The feeling was truly terrifying. Shukir trembled in his arms, clinging tightly to him, not daring to let go. Zhang Ye silently marveled at the power of nature, one hand stroking her smooth back and the other comforting her. It's okay, nothing will happen. I'm here, everything is fine. Zhang Yi himself felt a little uneasy, but this was just a natural reaction to being at sea for the first time. In reality, even if something did happen, his abilities were more than enough to protect the lives of Shukir and the others. After the blizzard passed, they continued their journey. A few days later, they encountered more uninvited guests. That morning, sunlight pierced through the clouds and shone on the sea surface. The bright white light looked cold and provided little warmth. Although it was the middle of July and they had reached tropical waters, the temperature was still very low, around 1°. But this temperature was considered a paradise compared to the north. At the very least, a person's chances of survival in this environment had significantly improved. After a night of a fierce blizzard, Zhang Yi and the others couldn't help but step onto the deck, looking out at the gradually calming ice-covered sea, their hearts filled with emotion. However, at that very moment, a siren blared. Toot toot, to their side, at the far end of the vast horizon, a black dot was slowly approaching. Old Tian rushed over to Zhang Yi. A warship is approaching. It's the navy of the Malay nation. Zhang Yi asked curiously, aren't these international waters? Old Tian gave a bitter smile. As you know, the sea is now the same as the land. Many of the old rules no longer apply. Due to the shortage of supplies, many small countries have become nations of bandits. Some countries with navies also double as pirates. This situation is not uncommon. Zhang Yi slowly narrowed his eyes. The Malay nation was also a major power in the Great Ocean region. Until the other party revealed their intentions, Zhang Yi couldn't just directly attack. What do they want? Zhang Yi asked. Old Tian said, they are demanding to board our ship for an inspection. Mr. Zhang, what should we do? Old Tian's heart was pounding. A warship from the Malay nation was no joke. It was equipped with modern weaponry. Even with the Golden Wind's thick armor, it couldn't withstand the firepower and torpedoes of a warship. Zhang Yi frowned, considering their options. Xu Yunque said, we can talk to them. If they know we are a ship from Huaxia, they won't dare to make things difficult for us. Zhang Yi glanced at her. If we use the name of the Jiamen region, and say we are personnel dispatched from Blizzard City, they might be a little wary. But are you sure you want to reveal our identities? Xu Yunque was at a loss for words. Theirs was a secret mission. They absolutely could not reveal their identities. Even if we are a civilian vessel. Xu Yunque's voice trailed off. She had witnessed a lot of killing along the way, and her mentality was gradually changing. In these chaotic times, a human life was cheaper than grass. If they were truly just a merchant ship, no one would care what happened to them. Old Tian asked, what are your orders, sir? Zhang Ye nonchalantly stood up from the railing. Let them come over. We'll play it by ear and see what they intend to do. Zhang Yi didn't look for trouble, but he wasn't afraid of it either. His strength was his greatest asset. Receiving Zhang Ye's order, Old Tian immediately had his staff inform the other party that they would comply with the inspection. Shukir moved closer to Zhang Ye, and her small hand was enveloped by his large one. The tension in her heart immediately dissipated. She looked up at his calm face, a reassuring smile on her lips. In truth, Chu Yunk was also very nervous. This was the first time in her life she had ever encountered such a situation. If she couldn't reveal her identity, then she was just an ordinary citizen. Facing an inspection by a foreign navy at sea for the first time as a commoner, it was impossible not to be tense. She also wanted to get closer to Zhang Ye for a sense of security, but seeing Zhang Yi and Zhukir together made her feel like a third wheel. Before long, a grey warship appeared alongside the Golden Wind. It wasn't very large, only slightly bigger than their ship, but its deck was filled with soldiers in white combat uniforms, all holding weapons. Zhang Yi kept his eyes on them. The moment they made any unusual move, he would immediately open a spatial gate to counter their attack. On the deck of the Malay warship, a man who appeared to be an officer stepped out. His combat uniform was clearly different from that of the ordinary soldiers, making him easy to distinguish. He waved in their direction, and the two ships slowly drew closer. Soldiers laid down a wooden plank, then crossed it one by one, boarding the deck of the Golden Wind. Chu Yunk tried to explain to them, "We are from Hoxia. This is just an ordinary civilian cargo ship. We are absolutely not carrying any contraband." The Malaysian Navy soldiers paid her no mind. Instead, a soldier walked straight up to her, suddenly shoved her to the ground and pointed the muzzle of his gun directly at her head. "You speak when I tell you to speak. Now shut your mouth." The cold, black muzzle was pressed against Chu Yunk's head. She could even see the chilling rifling inside. Never in her life had anyone pointed a gun at her head. The young lady suddenly froze, sitting dumbfounded on the ground, not daring to move. Jian Ye quietly watched this scene but had no intention of intervening. His eyes, however, were fixed on the soldier's finger. He was only trying to scare Zhu Yunk. His finger wasn't on the trigger. "Now all of you, fold your arms and accept our inspection," the soldier roared, shaking the gun in his hand. The other soldiers had already rushed into the ship's cabin and begun to search. Jian Yi showed no reaction. There weren't many supplies on the ship. He had anticipated this situation, so the ship's hold normally only stored a small amount of supplies, enough for about a week. Zhu Yunk's face was pale with fear. She looked to Zhang Ye for help but saw that his expression remained calm. It was clear Zhang Yi did not want to reveal his identity. Small pearls of tears rolled from the corners of Zhu Yunk's eyes. Zhang Yi paid her no attention at all. She could only stand up obediently and stand next to Zhukir. A soldier with a gun demanded they hand over any weapons they had. Zhang Ye secretly signaled them, and everyone placed their weapons on the floor. Because of their cooperation, the Malay nation Navy took no further rough action. The man who looked like an officer scanned Zhang Yi and the others and asked, "Which one of you is the captain?" Zhang Yi replied, "Officer, I am the captain of this ship." The Malay nation officer's name was Ob. He stared at Zhang Yi's face and asked coldly, "People of the Huasi nation, why have you come to an ocean thousands of kilometers away? Speak, what is your purpose?" Zhang Yi swallowed, his voice stuttering slightly as if in fear. I received a distress signal from my sister. She's trapped on an island. I came to save her." "Save her? What a touching big brother." Ob sneered, clearly not believing a word Zhang Yi said. The sounds of commotion continued to come from inside the cabin. The soldiers were searching through their belongings very crudely, not wanting to miss a thing. Zhang Yi couldn't help but say, "Sir, we don't have many supplies left on the ship. Could you please leave us some food?" Ob completely ignored him. Not long after, the soldiers carried out many things from the ship's hold. There were many different kinds of canned food and ammunition, enough to make a large pile. Seeing this, Ob turned to his aide. "Did you find anything else suspicious?" The adjutant replied, "We've checked. This is just an ordinary civilian ship, nothing suspicious." Ob nodded. "Take them away. Let's head back." This was said in front of everyone. Zhang Yi heard it clearly, and his eyes narrowed. "Sir, we still have things to do." "Shut your mouth." A soldier pointed his gun directly at Zhang Yi's head. "You have no right to speak. Your ship has been requisitioned by the Mul Navy, and you have been given the great honor of serving the Mul Navy. Thank you for it, Isai. Old Tayanan." The others looked at the soldiers before them with great pity. "Isn't it good enough to be alive? Why must you seek death? The thing I hate most is having a gun pointed at my head." Space acceleration, 30 times. Zhang Ye's figure suddenly vanished from the side of the Mul Navy. In the air, a streak of black shadow flashed past, like a giant black snake appearing out of nowhere. A moment later, the dozen or so sailors and the guns in their hands were all sliced in two. Ob felt the hair on his body stand on end. He knew disaster was upon him. He raised both arms, forming a giant crystal shield in front of himself. However, all struggle was futile. He was cut in half just like the ordinary soldiers, dying on the spot. 2 seconds. The entire Mul force on the deck of the Jin Feng had been killed. The Mul Navy on the warship realized something was wrong, and hurriedly opened fire. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi had already leaped onto the deck of the warship. How terrifying was an attack from a peak. Delta, level awakened. To ordinary people and low, Level awakened, he was a god. Zheng Yai did not hesitate, going all out to kill the Molnevi before him. This operation had to be kept secret. A single second's delay and they could send information about them to the Molnaval command. At that point, their entire plan of action would be exposed. Zheng Yai could not bear this risk. That was why, from the beginning, he had intended to give them some supplies to resolve the matter peacefully. It was a pity that these Molnevi soldiers were too greedy. For that, they could only die. Zheng Yai slaughtered the soldiers on the deck, then turned and swung his blade back. Crash! The bulletproof glass of the command bridge and its thick armor were shattered like paper. Along with it, the soldiers inside were also destroyed, their bodies and the command bridge split in two. Quick, control their command station, Zheng Yai shouted to old Tian and the others. Then, he gripped the hilt of his blade, the Holy Arbiter, and plunged it into the deck below. Dark matter erupted like flames, destroying the entire propulsion system below deck, then transforming into a flood that poured into every cabin. The mole soldiers were swallowed by the dark matter. No matter what material their combat suits were made of, they couldn't resist. They were all submerged in an instant, and then disintegrated into subatomic particles. Zheng Yai jumped down from the gash, cleaning up the remnants. Old Tian also hurriedly led his men onto the warship and began to take control of the command station. The counterattack was completed in the blink of an eye. From the moment Zheng Yai made his move until Old Tian and the others boarded the ship, less than half a minute had passed. A few dozen seconds later, Zheng Yai had slaughtered everyone on the warship. The massacre was over quickly. Zheng Yai was breathing heavily, a sense of agitation still in his heart. It wasn't fear, but the worry that he hadn't killed them fast enough. That intelligence might have been leaked, potentially compromising their mission. He returned to the warship's bridge with his blade. The roof of the command center had been cut off, exposing all the electronic equipment to the cold wind. How is it? Did they transmit any intelligence about us? Zheng Yai asked. Among the sailors, there were, of course, engineers. After a quick check, one of them reported, "Sir, they didn't have time to send anything. However, this ship is now heavily damaged. Before long, the Molnavi will discover the problem. Can you buy us some time? The longer, the better." The sailor replied, 2 hours at most before they realize something is wrong. With their technical capabilities, they will definitely find our position. At that point, we could be surrounded by the Molnavi, which would be very troublesome. Zheng Yai bit his finger, then immediately returned to the Jin Feng and used the communication equipment to contact Yang Sinzin back in Tiandai City. "Big brother, Sinzin misses you so much." Yang Sinzin's lovely face appeared on the screen. Zheng Yai smiled. Even though he was at sea, he could still have video chats with the people at home every few days. "Sinzin, I've run into a very troublesome problem right now. Can you help me think of a solution?" Zheng Yai explained the situation clearly to Yang Sinzin. After listening, Yang Sinzin, while eating a lollipop, said, "This problem is easy to solve. As long as their communication device is in your hands, it's a piece of cake. Big brother, just connect the device to my computer. Sinzin can help you falsify their documents to communicate with the Molnavi. This way, it should take at least 30 hours before they realize something is wrong." Yang Sinzin sat in the control room of the shelter, dozens of large screens in front of her. Her fair hands typed rapidly on the keyboard. Their management system is definitely chaotic right now. Sinzin will find a way to cover this up. Zheng Yai, remembering their attempt to rob the Jinfen, said, "Just tell them they encountered a ship of Nahom exiles and wanted to plunder their supplies. If it can cause trouble for the Nahom, even better." "Okay, we'll go with your script then." Zheng Yai acted immediately, plugging a signal receiver into the warship's control console. Yang Sinzin quickly hacked into its system. Then, she sent a message to the Molnaval department stating that the ship they encountered was not from the Huasi nation but belonged to a group of Nahom exiles, and that they were now in pursuit. In the apocalypse, with so much unverifiable intelligence, this story was unlikely to raise any red flags. Afterward, Yang Sinzin would periodically contact the mole to prolong the deception. During this time, Zheng Yai and the others would have long since left the mole's waters by boat. Even if the enemy wanted to track them, the lack of sufficient intelligence, coupled with the high cost of a long-distance sea voyage, would likely lead them to give up. Yang Sinzin took control of the warship, sending false signals to the Molnaval department, while Zheng Yai and the others returned to the Jinfeng. Full speed ahead. "Let's get out of these waters quickly," Zheng Yai ordered. "Yes, sir." Old Tian didn't dare to delay, immediately ordering everyone to proceed at maximum speed. A look of excitement was evident on the sailors' faces. Seeing their leader so overwhelmingly powerful, casually wiping out even the navy of a nation, they couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Everyone worked with enthusiasm, rushing back to their posts. It was only then that Zheng Yai noticed Chu Kir treating Zhu Yun. A moment ago, the soldier had pushed her, dislocating her elbow. In the cold weather, the human body is more fragile and prone to injury. Moreover, Zhu Yun was a pampered young lady, so this was not surprising. It's alright, you're fine, Shukir said. She could easily heal the injury with her doctor ability, but the pain couldn't be dissipated so quickly. Yu Yun sobbed, her eyes red, and looked at Zhang Yai with a sense of grievance. When they were bullying me, why didn't you do anything? In her heart, she felt she had been treated unfairly. If Zhang Yai had stepped in to save her sooner, she wouldn't have been hurt. When had she ever been bullied by a mere foot soldier? If you had just kept your mouth shut, nothing would have happened, Zhang Yai replied indifferently. His attitude infuriated Zhu Yun. That mole soldier pointed a gun at my head just now. I almost died. You don't care about me at all. She screamed at him. From our very first meeting, your attitude towards me has been terrible. I don't know how I've offended you. I've been trying so hard to get along with you. What more do you want me to do? Zheng Ye remained silent. Somehow, it all sounded like it was his fault. From the very beginning, wasn't it Zhao Yun who had maintained an arrogant attitude towards him? Besides, they were just colleagues working together. Jian Yai had no responsibility to flatter her. My promise to Marshal Qi was only to ensure your survival. But this mission is very important. I don't like having an extra burden. If you were just a little more sensible, I wouldn't have this attitude towards you. Jian Ye frowned, looking at her as if she were a child. Drop the princess attitude. The things you consider a source of pride are useless in the world today. Do Yun was deeply hurt but refused to admit it. How could she be wrong? Clearly the one at fault was this insensitive, cold, and heartless man in front of her. You're lying. You're still holding a grudge because I told you to shake my hand without taking off your glove. You're taking revenge on me. She shouted. Without hesitation, Zhang Yi said, damn, I can't believe you figured it out. You're really smart. I never forgave you for that. Yun was stunned. She was just venting her anger. She never expected Zheng Ye to actually admit it. Jian Yai grinned, pointing a finger at his own nose. You should do some research on me. I'm famous for being petty. I always get my revenge. He opened his eyes wide, a cold, impatient glint flashing within. So from now on, don't ever bother me again. He glanced out at the vast, icy sea. In a place like this, any accident could happen. He had just killed people, and the thick scent of fresh blood still clung to him, not yet dissipated. This killing intent sent a chill down Zhu Yun's spine. Her face turned pale, and she staggered back a few steps before hastily running into the ship's cabin. Finally, that annoying woman is gone. Zheng Yai breathed a sigh of relief. At last the world is quiet. Seeing this, Shukir said with some worry, she is Xu Zheng's niece, after all. Talking to her like that might not be a good idea, right? There's nothing not good about it. Zhang Yai leaned against the railing as the Jin Feng sped on, the cold wind whipping past him. He felt nothing, thanks to the state-of-the-art cold weather gear he was wearing. I'm not exactly a person of noble sentiments. Deftly handling situations has nothing to do with me. Zhang Ye smiled meaningfully. Seeing his expression, Shukir suddenly recalled the scene from half a year ago when she first met him. When the apocalypse came, he showed no regard for anyone, living with absolute freedom. And now, Zhang Yai was still the same. She smiled gently. Sometimes I often think, I wish I could be as free as you are. It's easy. If you have no morals, you can't be bound by them. Life becomes much easier when you live without a care. Back in her room, the first thing Zhu Yun thought of was to find Zhu Zheng to tell. She was like a schoolgirl who had been bullied, or perhaps not bullied, but simply felt wronged reporting to the head teacher. This was a well-trodden path for her. The communication device connected to Zhu Zheng's office. His sullen face appeared behind the desk. Yun, what is it? Zhu Yun sniffled. Uncle, I almost died. She recounted the recent events to Zhu Zheng, full of grievance. She expected that after hearing her story, Xu Zhen would give Zhang Yai a stern lecture. However, after listening, Xu Zhen simply smiled and said, rest assured, it's just a small matter. The Mole Navy is nothing to worry about. A ship of the Huasi nation can go wherever it wants. He thought Zhu Yun was crying because she had been bullied by the mole soldiers. Zhu Yun said, dissatisfied, Uncle, those mole soldiers were hateful, but Zhang Yai's attitude towards me was no better. I was pushed down, and they pointed a gun at me, but Zhang Yai didn't help me get revenge. Xu Zheng asked in surprise, didn't Zhang Ye kill all the mole soldiers? Doesn't that count as getting revenge for you? Zhu Yun was momentarily speechless. Well, yes, but at the time, he seemed completely indifferent. Xu Zheng said with a knowing smile, you silly girl. Zhang Yai has a cold exterior, but a warm heart. He may look like he doesn't care about anything, but he's actually very passionate. He's like a pile of dry firewood. You need to use your own flame to ignite it first, and only then can you raise the temperature. Dry wood and a strong fire, you understand the meaning, right? Zhang Yai is very important to me and the entire Jiannan Greater region. You must build a good relationship with him. Seduce him. Zhu Yun was completely speechless. She even felt that Zhang Yai's position in Xu Zhen's heart was more important than her own. full of resentment she couldn't voice. De Yun, not being a fool, knew that continuing to criticize Jiang Yi would only displease her uncle. But after ending the call, she couldn't help but feel annoyed. Jiang Yi, you truly have eyes but can't see. A young lady with looks and talent like mine, how can you be so heartless? Do Yun muttered in anger. She wanted to get closer to Jiang Yi, but he always had Chukir by his side. The two of them were inseparable, giving her no opportunity to wedge her way in. With Chukir there, her own appeal was immediately diminished. The Jin Feng continued its journey southeast. At mealtime, Zhou Yun proactively sought out Jiang Yi. This time, her attitude was much better. He spoke with my uncle about the Mulnavi issue. He said you don't need to worry, just continue with the mission. If any problems arise, the greater region will handle them for you. Jiang Yi looked at her gentle demeanor and couldn't help but smirk. I thought you only knew how to run to your uncle to file a complaint against me. Zhou Yun's temper flared. How can you just slander people like that? Jiang Yi raised an eyebrow. So I guessed right, didn't I? The truth is always the sharpest knife. Zhou Yun took a deep breath. Alright, I admit I had some prejudice against you before. From now on, I'll try to listen to you more, okay? I also hope you'll treat me a little better. You should know, I'm not an unreasonable woman who goes around causing trouble. Besides, I can be of great help to you in the future. She was implying to Jiang Yi that if he were with her, he would have the opportunity to gain more power in the Jiangnan greater region, and raise his status. Jiang Yi paused his eating slightly, then said nothing in response to her words. Like water off a duck's back, nearly half a month passed in a flash. The time spent drifting at sea was longer than expected, making even Jiang Yi feel more restless. A long sea voyage was an incredibly boring affair. Trapped on the rocking icebreaker, seeing the same people and the same scenery every day. It was almost like being in the shelter, but on land, at least, there was a sense of stability, and he could often go out for a walk. On the frozen sea, leaving the ship was impossible. It wasn't that Jiang Yi couldn't go ashore when they passed land, but with his cautious nature, it was clearly not a wise thing to do. Firstly, the ship lacked no necessities, he had prepared sufficiently. Secondly, the land they passed could rarely provide supplies and was instead crawling with bandits and pirates. While passing through several small countries, the Jin Feng once again encountered robbery attempts. But Jiang Yi was decisive, eradicating them down to the root. The pirates and bandits on land that he encountered basically did not survive. However, there was one rather troublesome matter. Their ship was constantly being watched by the Colombian Long-Range Navy. As the world's #1 naval power, Colombia's satellite surveillance system was in no way inferior to the Huasi nation's Nebula system. Moreover, to avoid causing a stir, Jiang Yi did not use military-grade signal jammers. This made their movements very clear. This issue had been discussed between Zhu Zheng, Jiang Yi, and Zhu Yun. Since they had declared the mission was to repatriate citizens, there was no need for concealment. The core of the mission lay in the secrets held by a few specific individuals. Furthermore, the Colombian Long-Range Navy was not short on supplies. Their parent country would ensure their supply lines. Therefore, there was basically no need to worry about the Colombian forces making a move on Jiang Yi. On the 39th day of the sea voyage, Jiang Yi and the others encountered an extremely strange sight at sea. That day, Jiang Yi was in his cabin discussing calligraphy with Chukir. Jiang Yi himself preferred the cursive script, often using it to train his temperament. Suddenly, the hull began to shake. Violently and continuously. Old Tayan rushed over, pounding on the door bang, bang, bang with an unprecedented urgency. Seeing this, Jiang Yi had no choice but to quickly clear his desk, tell Chukir to adjust her clothes, and then go open the door for Old Tayan. What happened? What's all this ruckus about? Jiang Yi said with a frown. But Old Tayan and the two sailors behind him said to Jiang Yi with terror in their voices, Mr. Jiang, we've encountered sea monsters. Jiang Yi and Chukir exclaimed in unison. The fabled sea monsters have finally arrived. Ever since setting sail, Jiang Yi and Chukir had thought they might encounter sea monsters in the ocean. They were partly worried, but also a little expectant. Near the coast, they had encountered a mutated whale, but that whale was only large in size and didn't possess overwhelming destructive power. Jiang Yi analyzed that it had probably been chased from the deep sea into the coastal waters. The true rulers that had appeared in the deep sea had made it fear being turned into food, so it had fled to the less dangerous coastal areas. But it never expected that it wouldn't die at the hands of a sea creature, but instead at the hands of a four-legged species from land. Sometimes, your killer isn't one of your own kind, but an outsider crossing boundaries. Jiang Yi returned to the present, pressing his right hand on the bracelet on his wrist. A black combat suit automatically enveloped his body. Wait for me a moment. He closed the door, and began to retrieve his combat gear. Chukir didn't stand by either, also starting to change. The investigation team's combat suit was something Jiang Yi had exchanged for. He had saved Zhu Zhen and driven off the Samsara squad. All the enormous accumulated points he received were used to exchange for high-tech weapons. At the very least, everyone in his house had a set, including Jo Hai-mei, who spent her days at home cooking and helping Uncle Vilu relieve stress. Once fully dressed, Jiang Yi opened the door and went out to the deck with Chukir. The Jin Feng was swaying violently, and the sailors on deck all had to fasten safety ropes around their waists. Outside, a great storm was raging. Everything before them was a hazy gray, and visibility was poor. In the distance, the sea churned with massive waves, as if something enormous was overturning it. Terrifying roars constantly echoed in their ears, sounding like they came from some ancient, deep god. Yu Yun stood blocking the cabin door, her expression a mixture of fear and a desire to see what was happening. Hyun-ye pulled her to the side. You two stay here. Don't run out. Be careful not to get knocked into the sea by a wave. A flicker of emotion touched Jo Yunku's heart. It turned out Zhang Yi did care about her. In reality, Zhang Yi just figured that if she died, he would have a hard time explaining it to Zhu Zheng. The deck was shaking too much. Zhang Yi directly deployed his boundary field and air control art, letting his body float in the sky above the Jin Feng. This time, he could finally see the full picture of the sea monsters old Tian had spoken of. About 20 nautical miles from the Jin Feng, the seawater was stained a bright red. It wasn't one sea monster, but many. Literally, Zhang Yi saw many heads, otherwise, he couldn't have determined the number of sea monsters. In the icy blue ocean, the size of the sea monsters was immense. Just a glance suggested their lengths were all over 50 meters. Zhang Yi continued to ascend, trying to get a clearer view. After flying to an altitude of several thousand meters, he finally saw it clearly. 1 head, 2 heads, 5 heads, a total of 5 sea monsters. 4 giant sharks were surrounding a monster that looked like a sea serpent or an eel. Those sharks had also mutated. It was unknown if it was because they had previously lived near Nahong, but they looked extremely ferocious and distorted. 1 shark had its head covered in eyes, another had 2 heads, and Zhang Yi even saw 1 shark that had grown human-like arms. They were frantically biting the giant sea serpent before them. It was called a sea serpent, because it had a slender body over 100 meters long, covered entirely in black scales. However, a giant, sharp horn grew on its head, and on its back were hundreds of black protrusions, larger than a shark's dorsal fin. Its enormous body undulated on the sea surface like a terrifying, continuous mountain range. Facing the siege of the 4 mutated sharks, its head was held high above the water. Its body constantly swept around, countless scales falling into the sea, its blood staining a 10-kilometer stretch of sea red. Suddenly, its giant horn emitted a dazzling purple light, finally shooting out a beam of light that swept across the 4 surrounding sharks. Instantly, one of the sharks was pierced by this beam, letting out a tragic cry before sinking to the bottom of the sea. The battle between the sea monsters horrified Zhang Yi. The sharks madly tore at the sea serpent's body. The serpent's huge frame was covered in wounds, revealing the skeleton within. But it was also terrifyingly powerful. After killing 1 shark with the laser from its head, it reared its head back violently and then plunged its horn fiercely into the back of another shark. Splat, the sound was like a knife cutting into pore. Blood sprayed like a waterfall, and the shark convulsed in midair. Jiang Yi couldn't help but swallow. After regaining his composure, he immediately returned to the deck. Full speed ahead, let's get out of this area, Jiang Yi told old Tan. The sea monsters were too terrifying, incomparable to the mutated whale Jiang Yi had encountered before. Just those 4 sharks alone, their size and destructive power were horrifying, perhaps even stronger than Kanyu of the Tianlong pirates whom he had previously faced. If the sea monsters discovered their ship and attacked, it would be no small trouble for Zhang Yi. Hearing this, old Tan also knew the situation was extremely dangerous. He hurriedly ordered the sailors to go at full speed, heading in the opposite direction of the sea monsters. The Jin Feng fled the area, but from time to time, they could still hear the roars of the sea monsters. Zhang Yi turned his head and saw lightning continuously striking the sky, hitting the sea area where the creature was. 10 minutes later, after the ship had traveled several dozen nautical miles, everything around them returned to silence. But Zhang Yi could still smell the thick stench of blood in the air. It had been a terrifying battle. The dangers deep in the ocean were far more frightening than those on land. Zhang Yi stood on the deck, marveling internally. Something's not right, Chief, something's not right, old Tian suddenly said to Zhang Yi. What's wrong? Zhang Yi asked. Old Tian looked down at the sea. The seawater is crimson, stained with blood. Sea creatures are very sensitive to the smell of blood. Normally, with such a strong scent of blood here, schools of fish would definitely be drawn to it. But why isn't there a single fish in sight? Hearing this, a thought flashed through Zhang Yi's mind, and at the same time, his passive ability, Temporal Echo, activated. Temporal Echo was one of the abilities Zhang Yi had acquired after absorbing the powers of Hakuin, Mayumi, Shai, and Kanat. It was a time-based ability, a passive skill that warned him of impending attacks. Below, Zhang Yi looked down at his feet, or more precisely, beneath the surface of the sea. The feeling of being targeted by a ferocious beast instantly washed over him. Without hesitation, Zhang Yi used his levitation ability on the entire ship, and then opened a spatial gate beneath its hull. Boom! Just as he completed this maneuver, the surrounding seawater suddenly began to churn violently. From above, one could see that a massive whirlpool had formed, with the area the golden wind had just passed through as its epicenter. It was a vortex with a radius of thousands of meters. And deep within the whirlpool, a huge black dorsal fin loomed among the waves. It's that sea serpent. Jiang Ye recognized it. It was the same giant sea serpent that had just killed the 4 mutant sharks. He hadn't expected it to notice the humans in this direction and give chase. Perhaps it had detected Jiang Ye, a distinctly different human. Jiang Ye lifted the golden wind, and the sea serpent's enormous, crimson eyes stared straight at him. As expected, it had come for him. Those blood-red eyes were filled with a bloody killing intent. Jiang Ye estimated that each of its eyes was twice the size of his entire body. Although he didn't know if it understood human language, Jiang Yi still used a loudspeaker. "We are not your enemies. We are just passing through." The sea beast ignored Jiang Ye's explanation. It raised its head from the water, a massive, sharp horn aimed directly at Jiang Ye, and then fired a beam of purple light. Jiang Ye's pupils contracted. He immediately opened a second spatial gate in front of him. The laser beam continuously shot into the gate, only stopping after a full 30 seconds. The intensity of this energy was extremely high. The pressure it gave Jiang Ye was no less than that of a captain-level superhuman. And in the ocean, its home turf, it could probably wipe out an entire investigation team. If it weren't Jiang Ye here today, but Den Shentum or Bian Zhenyu, they would almost certainly be dead. Because the sea beast only needed to destroy their ship to kill them at will. No wonder Zhu Zhen insisted I take this mission. Jiang Yi took a deep breath. They call me the absolute defense, after all. The sea beast's attack was ineffective, which made it much more cautious. But its massive body continued to circle in the ocean, its colossal form constantly twisting, creating an indescribable pressure. But Jiang Yi was also angry. "I didn't provoke you, so what are you being so arrogant for?" Full counterattack. He adjusted the direction of the absorbed laser beam and sent it back in its entirety. Seeing its own attack reflected back, a look of confusion appeared in the sea beast's eyes. However, it also recognized the power of the attack. After a major battle, its body was already covered in wounds. Being hit by the laser beam again, it immediately let out an extremely terrifying roar. Scales and flesh flew everywhere, and one could even see its black skeleton inside. In Zhang Yi's right hand, the power of the void had begun to condense, preparing to form a fatal blow to end its life. The sea beast finally realized that the power of the man before it could kill it. It roared once more, then, without hesitation, plunged into the water and swam towards the deep sea. The void spear, an unstable antimatter, finished condensing, forming a spear over 2 meters long, and was fired with precision. Numerous afterimages appeared in Zhang Ye's vision, which eventually merged into one. It turned out that this precision shot was Zhang Ye's earliest time-based ability, the prototype of temporal echo. It could predict an opponent's trajectory, and once locked on by the echo, there was no escape. The void spear left his hand and plunged into the sea. In its path, the seawater parted as if it had met its nemesis. Millions of tons of seawater made way for it to chase the sea beast. Rumble. Immediately after, the seawater rushed back into the enormous tunnel, submerging everything. But soon, dark red, almost black, blood began to well up from below. Zheng Yi frowned. Since his power had increased, the strength of the void spear had also been greatly enhanced, allowing for a shift from area of effect to single-point kills. But even so, whether one blow could kill this giant sea beast was still an unknown. This was the ocean, its territory, and Zhang Yi couldn't give chase. "Get the hell away from me. If not, I'll definitely kill you next time." The sea surface became calm again, but the blood had stained the surrounding dozens of miles of ocean, creating a terrifying and eerie sight. On Old Tan's side, the radar showed no large creatures nearby. Zhang Ye asked, "How far are we from Yanlu Island?" Old Tan replied, "A little over 1,000 nautical miles. At our current speed, we'll arrive in 3 days. Have someone monitor the radar room around the clock." "It's possible that sea monster isn't dead," Zhang Ye warned. Old Tan couldn't help but swallow. Being targeted by such a monster, spending every day on the vast sea, was enough to make anyone anxious. Seeing his fear, Zhang Ye said calmly, "It's seriously injured. It's probably looking for a place to heal right now. It won't be able to bother us for a while. After we pick up the people, we'll leave here immediately. The return trip should be faster than the journey here. Once we're back on land, we won't have to worry about sea monsters anymore." Old Tan nodded in agreement and returned to the helm. Zhang Ye went back to the cabin. Shi Yunque ran up to him and asked, "What about that sea monster? Did you kill it?" Zhang Ye recounted, "It was seriously injured and fled into the deep sea." It's not a threat to us for now. Xu Yun was still worried. It's not dead. What if it targets us again later? Jian Yai thought to himself, how would I know? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The worst case scenario is the ship gets destroyed, and I can still escape with Jukir. As for the others, I can only say I'll do my best. Of course, the probability of that happening was relatively low. With him here, the chances of that monster destroying the Golden Wind were close to zero. In about 3 days, they would reach Yanlu Island. Jian Ye said to Xu Yun, contact the people over there. Xu Yun's eyes gradually lit up. Finally, they were going ashore. After more than a month at sea, she was at her wit's end. A hint of a proud smile touched her lips. Xu Zheng had entrusted the communication channel with the people on Yanlu Island to her. Perhaps he was worried Jian Yai wouldn't pay any attention to her. All right. Come to my room, and we'll contact them from there, she said, smiling brightly at Jian Yai. Not minding, Jian Yi followed her to her room. Xu Yun's room was nicely arranged, considered first class on the entire ship, second only to Jian Yai and Jukir's. Jian Yai entered the room and sat down directly on a chair. Xu Yun reached into her closet and took out a box. It was her communication device. She spread the equipment out on the floor and began to contact the people on Yanlu Island. The process was a bit long. Xu Yun tried several times but received no response. Zheng Yi frowned. What's going on? Could something unexpected have happened? They had been at sea for over a month. In the apocalypse, that much time was enough for many things to change. It was possible the people on Yanlu Island were already dead. Xu Yun frowned slightly. Let me try again. She didn't give up. She was quite focused when she were. A few minutes later, the communicator finally received a signal. I've got it. Her eyes lit up. Hello, may I ask if you are Snow Wolf? Snow Wolf was the code name of one of the people on Yanlu Island. It wasn't that the Jiangnan region didn't know his real information, but they used code names during communication to avoid being overheard. Jiang Yai walked over and listened to the voice on the other end. It was the voice of a young man, filled with exhaustion, tension, and excitement. Snow Wolf. Is that you, old sir? Have you arrived? It's very dangerous here. More than half of our group is dead. We can't hold on much longer. Xu Yun said calmly, don't be tense. We will arrive in about 3 days. As she spoke, she operated the device in her hand. This equipment was connected to the Nebula system and could directly observe the entire Yanlu Island. Xu Yun was selecting a suitable landing spot. Where are you located now? We will land in an area near you, to the northwest. There is a cliff. The voice on the other end hesitated for a moment, then continued, and a secret cave below it. We are there. Xu Yun zoomed in on the map of that area. The perimeter of Yanlu Island was covered in a layer of white ice, which also made some of the previously sheer cliffs passable. The place where Snow Wolf and the others were hiding was at the foot of a cliff. Without a satellite map, it would be truly difficult to find. Zheng Yi stepped forward and asked, is there danger on the island? Snow Wolf said weakly, there are many people on the island. Not just us and the natives, but also refugees who came here later. The island has a volcano and geothermal heat, so it can support many people. But there isn't enough food. Some people have started killing others to survive. Not many people on the island froze to death, they died of starvation, disease, but most were killed and became food. Xu Yun's expression was grave. She quickly reassured him, you don't need to be afraid. We are here to take you home. We will definitely protect you. Zheng Yi leaned closer and continued to ask, are there any superhumans? Specifically, humans or mutated creatures with great power. Are there any armed organizations? Snow Wolf replied, there are armed organizations, local gangs. However, it's true that a few people have suddenly gained great power. After confirming there were no professional military forces, Jiang Yai relaxed considerably. As for superhumans, he wasn't too worried. A small island like Yanlu didn't have the conditions to produce powerful ones. If there really were any, Snow Wolf wouldn't have had the chance to call for help from the Jiangnan region. The place would have long since been dominated by them. He patted Xu Yun's shoulder, signaling her to continue talking to Snow Wolf. Jiang Yai had finished his questions. He wasn't concerned with other matters, he was only responsible for picking up the people. Jiang Yai left Xu Yun's room and went to the control room, summoning Old Tan. Old Tan, we're about to reach our destination. Have everyone prepare their weapons and gear. Make sure they wear bulletproof vests. Also, keep a close watch on the surrounding waters. Report any movement to me immediately. Out of caution, Jiang Yai wouldn't trust any strangers. Therefore, he would only feel at ease when they were fully prepared. Yes, Mr. Jiang. 3 days later, the Golden Wind arrived at Yanlu Island without any incident. Located in the middle of the ocean near the equator, this island was formed by the eruption of an undersea volcano and erupted once every 37 years, making it an active volcanic island. Because of this, Yanlu Island had significant geothermal heat underground. In the 1950s, humans had learned to control the volcanic eruptions on the island, minimizing the danger. Yanlu Island was also developed into a tourist destination, especially famous for its local hot springs. After the apocalypse, a total of over 5,000 refugees had come here to escape the disaster. Combined with the local population and tourism staff, the population had reached over 20,000. This was the basic intelligence on Yanlu Island. Around 9:30 in the morning, a bone-chilling wind blew from the northwest towards the equator, the region with the highest temperatures on Earth. The temperature here was now around 20. The Jin Feng approached Lava Flow Island from the sea. The entire region was covered in a vast expanse of white, and the coastal area was frozen into thick layers of ice. As the most advanced icebreaker of its time, the Jin Feng didn't need to stop in the outer sea. Its massive, heavy hull crushed the thick ice, advancing towards the coastline of Lava Flow Island. Following their communication with Snow Wolf, they arrived at the northwest position of Lava Flow Island and found a port to dock. Zheng Yai ordered everyone to get ready, then asked Zhu Yun to contact the man with the codename Snow Wolf. Zhu Yun immediately used the communicator to call Snow Wolf, while Zheng Yai divided the men into groups. Of the 16 sailors, 10 would remain on the ship. He himself planned to take 6 sailors ashore. Not long after, Zhu Yun made contact with Snow Wolf. "They'll be here right away," she told Zheng Yai. Zheng Yai nodded, then ordered the sailors to lower the gangplank. "Is the substance called the Source of God really on this island?" Zheng Yai wondered curiously, looking at the snow-covered island before him. A mysterious substance that could enhance the power of the awakened, and even help him break through the genetic limit to reach a higher realm. Zheng Yai was still curious. It would be best if he could obtain it. Although he wasn't particularly concerned with increasing his power, in this apocalyptic world, only by being strong enough could one survive. Shukir and Zhu Yun followed Zheng Yai. "I hear the hot springs here are wonderful," Shukir said with a smile beside Zheng Yai. "If possible, I'd like to go for a soak later. Being at sea for over a month is really exhausting. Now that my feet are on solid ground, and I hear the geothermal energy here is abundant, it's hard to resist the urge to experience it. The hot springs are rich in minerals, which are very good for your health." Shukir placed a hand on Zheng Yai's shoulder and spoke with a smile. She didn't link her arm through his, because when in a state of alert, Zheng Yai hated people doing that. Seeing this, Zhu Yun couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. After the long time spent at sea, her relationship with Zheng Yai hadn't made any significant progress. Zheng Yai always kept his distance from her, having drawn a clear line from the very beginning. She still didn't understand what she was lacking. Just as they were observing the situation on Lava Flow Island and discussing bathing in hot springs, Zheng Yai suddenly felt a sense of danger. "Be careful," he immediately expanded his boundary field, protecting those around him. The next moment, the sound of gunshots erupted. In the distant snow, figures flickered in and out of sight. They suddenly appeared from the snow, and then opened fire fiercely at Zheng Yai and his group. However, all the bullets were swallowed by his spatial ability. It was an ambush, but they were all just regular bullets. These were not awakened. Zheng Yai reacted quickly, a slight smirk playing on his lips. These people were surely the danger on the island that Snow Wolf had mentioned earlier. It couldn't be helped. The arrival of the Jin Feng at Lava Flow Island was too conspicuous and had certainly attracted the attention of some people. They wanted to kill them for their supplies. Zheng Yai waved his hand, and all the bullets shot back in the direction they came from. All the gunmen hiding in the snow were pierced by their own bullets, suffering heavy casualties. Screams and tragic cries echoed across the island. Zheng Yai heard angry curses in the distance. The attackers were one of the notorious violent organizations on Lava Flow Island. Their leader was a man named Kunbei, from a small country in Southeast Asia. After discovering the Jin Feng, they immediately set up an ambush, planning to rob and kill them, but they never expected their targets to be so tough. Kunbei glared in Zheng Yai's direction. Just from their attire, one could tell that these people were not ordinary, but risking their lives was better than waiting to die on this island. Perhaps there was still a chance to survive. "Brothers, charge!" Kunbei, holding a rifle, stood up and fired at Zheng Yai's group. Just a bunch of lackeys. Zheng Yai didn't want to waste time. He drew 2 golden desert eagles, and held them horizontally. His precise marksmanship locked onto dozens of enemies hundreds of meters away. The sound of gunshots was like firecrackers. With every shot Zheng Yai fired, an enemy was shot in the head and died. The sailors were not idle either. They were all well trained. Without a gun, they were skilled sailors. With a gun, they were proficient warriors. Each held a weapon, and began to counter-attack. Initially, the enemy had the advantage of cover while Zheng Yai's group was exposed at the port, making them easy targets. But first, Zheng Yai had the ability to swallow bullets. Second, to put it bluntly, even if Zheng Yai and his group stood there and let the enemy shoot, the combat uniforms they wore could not be penetrated by the ragged, outdated guns in the hands of these refugees. In less than a minute, the attackers were almost completely wiped out. Even when they realized the situation was not in their favor and tried to escape, they could not avoid the bullets that Zhang Ye fired. The organization's leader, Kun Bai, also did not expect the enemy to be so powerful. He had no choice but to go all out. Let me show you how formidable I am. Kun Bai's body suddenly twisted, transforming into a bizarre creature covered in white bone spikes, like a giant centipede. Then, he suddenly plunged into the snow, charging towards Zhang Yi and his companions from under the ice and snow. Very fast. Zhang Yi frowned, sensing an impending attack from underground. He didn't flinch, merely taking out his blade, the holy arbiter, then turning and stabbing it fiercely into the snowy ground. Squish, a stream of fresh blood shot up from the ground, immediately followed by a tragic scream. Zhang Ye forcefully pulled Kunbei's corpse out, and awakened, probably only at the beta level. Kunbei's appearance startled Chukir and Zhu Yun. Women are instinctively afraid of such insects, especially a large centipede nearly 2 meters long. Who wouldn't get goosebumps looking at it? Only Zhang Yi, who had killed countless people, had become numb to such bizarre sights. Who are you? Why did you attack us? Zhang Yi asked with a smile, carrying a lofty sense of ridicule. If anyone in the Jiangnan Greater region knew that a mere beta level awakened dared to attack him, it would surely make everyone laugh their heads off. Spare me, I'll never dare to do it again. I know I was wrong. Kunbei's head twisted on the sword, wailing and begging for mercy. Zhang Yi suddenly lost interest in him. He was just a useless coward who was afraid of death. No, you only know that you're going to die. Zhang Yi forcefully flung him to the ground. Kunbei twisted his body, trying to escape, but Zhang Yi pierced him again with another stab. Splat, fresh blood spurted out once more. I hear centipedes are hard to kill. Zhang Yi stabbed down along its long body, from head to tail, until he had nearly cut its body in half before he stopped. The moment Zhang Yi and the others set foot on shore, they were attacked by an armed organization on Lava Flow Island. This proved that Zhang Yi's vigilance was correct. If it had been an ordinary rescue team that came here instead of them, they would probably have been shot dead. The sound of gunfire would surely attract the attention of many people. Chukir said to Zhang Yi, it's alright. It seems there are no powerful experts on this island. Zhang Yi said casually, even beta level awakened like this dare to openly attack us. It proves that even if there are awakened on this island, their level is not high. It's understandable. Lava Flow Island can be considered isolated from the rest of the world now. They probably gained a little bit of power and thought they were invincible. Just then, a sailor suddenly raised his gun and shouted towards the distance. Who's there? Come out now, don't shoot, I'm from the Hosi nation. A man walked out from the distance with his hands raised. He wore a white coat, and a tightly pulled-up hood, revealing only half of his face, but he didn't look very young. Are you the rescue team sent by the Hosi nation? The man asked cautiously as he approached. Zhang Yi and Zhu Yun looked at each other, then asked him, are you Snow Wolf? The man was stunned for a moment, then tears suddenly welled up in his dry eyes. You're from our homeland. Zhang Yi nodded. Yes, that's us. He suddenly covered his eyes, knelt on the ground, and sobbed. That's wonderful. You've finally come. Wonderful, wonderful. He stammered, endlessly repeating, wonderful. Zhang Yi could understand his feelings. In an isolated place like this, with no food and surrounded by murderous villains, not everyone could comprehend this kind of despair. Seeing the man's state, Zhou Yun's heart itched, and she hurried over to help him up. After some questioning, Zhang Yi learned the man's identity. His name was Li Zongju, an ethnic Chinese whose parents had emigrated to Star Island in the last century. The main language on Star Island was Chinese, so Li Zongju's Chinese was very fluent. He taught history at a school on Star Island, and had come to Lava Flow Island on a school-organized trip. As a result, the sudden ice age struck, and they were trapped here. Don't worry, we're here to take you back home, Zhu Yun said, full of sympathy, as she listened to Li Zongju's story. According to Li Zongju, after the apocalypse came, this island gradually turned into a living hell. More than half of their group had died, and most of them had become food for the bandit organizations. After hearing Li Zongju's account, Zhang Yi still didn't feel much emotion. He had seen too much of this in Tanhai City, there was nothing strange about it. At least, compared to those who died tragically in Tanhai, Li Zongju and the others were much luckier. At least they were still alive. And seeing Zhu Yun's compassionate appearance, Zhang Yi frowned. They were here only for the purpose of bringing Li Zongju back, not to make any other promises. First, I need to confirm that the information you transmitted to Blizzard City is correct. Zhang Yi stepped in front of him, looking at him with a cold expression. The thing you mentioned, is it on your person or not? Li Zongju became vigilant. He hesitated for a moment, then slowly nodded. I don't have it on me. As long as you get us out of here, I will definitely hand over the item to you as promised. Moreover, that thing is not on Lava Flow Island. If you want to know where it is, first ensure our survival. Not on Lava Flow Island. Junye frowned slightly. Does that mean the mission is not yet complete? Junye smiled faintly. Very good, very smart. Li Zongju's cautious approach earned him a bit of Junye's appreciation. He would absolutely not play his trump card until he confirmed he had received sufficient benefits. How many of your people are still alive? Junye asked coolly. Li Zongju replied, there are still more than 30 people. Junye could fully accept this number, it was much less than he had anticipated. Alright, I'll take you home. In front of Yun, Junye didn't ask about the mysterious stone again. After all, once they were on the ship, he would have plenty of time to ask. Where are your people? Junye looked around but saw no one else. Li Zongju took a deep breath and quickly pointed into the distance. They are all hiding in the caves. I heard the gunshots, so I ran out to check the situation. Junye said, take us there to see. He smiled. It seems there are still quite a few people on this island. We have to leave here quickly, we can't delay. The gunshots were very loud, the whole island could hear them. Of course, it also attracted the attention of some people. But Junye didn't care about the others. He was only here to complete the mission. The life and death of the others had nothing to do with him. Li Zongju hurriedly led the way for Junye. They crossed a beach and arrived at the foot of a cliff. Li Zongju went to a pile of rubble, pointed at it, and said, we've been staying in here. Just move the rocks to get in. Sorry to trouble you, but could you lend me a hand? Chu Yun smiled and nodded. There's nothing wrong with being cautious. You're very smart. She looked at the sailors beside her. A few of you help move that rock. Wait. But Junye held out his hand to stop them. He looked at Li Zongju with an amused expression. Why don't you do it yourself? Li Zongju's expression flickered with surprise, and he laughed a little uncomfortably. Seeing this, Chu Yun frowned and criticized Junye. Mr. John, what time is it for you to be so harsh? They have suffered so much on this island. Is it so hard to have your men help move a single rock? Junye ignored Chu Yun and pointed his right index finger at Li Zongju. He smiled and said, daring to go out and scout the situation alone amidst a storm of bullets. You're not an ordinary person, are you? Am I right, Snow Wolf? You're also a superhuman. Junye's eyes slowly widened, and his voice turned a little cold. You are very cautious, and I appreciate that. But in my eyes, your strength is nothing. So, stop hiding yourself in vain. It only bores me. Understand? Hearing this, a bitter smile appeared on Li Zongju's lips. I didn't intend to hide anything. As he spoke, in front of everyone, his body began to undergo a visible transformation. White fur sprouted all over his body, his frame grew larger, and sharp fangs and claws emerged. In a moment, he had transformed into a two-meter all-white snow wolf. A beast-type superhuman. I knew it. Otherwise, you couldn't have survived on this island, Junye said. He identified him as just a beta-level superhuman, with not much potential, let alone a threat. In a real fight, even a fully equipped sailor could probably kill him. He could only protect himself. Even so, I still had to watch countless people around me die, Li Zongju said sorrowfully. He alone couldn't protect everyone. To survive, people needed food and fuel, and those were critical resources on Yanlu Island, enough to make people kill for them. Li Zongju personally moved the large rock blocking the cave entrance, revealing an opening just over a meter wide. He reverted to his human form and led the way, crawling inside. Junye, highly vigilant, had two sailors enter first, then followed with Jukir and Chu Yun in the middle. 4 sailors brought up the rear. It was very dark inside the cave. The sailors turned on their flashlights, instantly illuminating the space. It was warm and humid, and the smell of sulfur was palpable, a common scent near hot springs. Junye was a little surprised. I thought this place would stink. How do you all manage bathing and sanitation? Li Zongju explained, I know a little about medicine, so I remind everyone to pay attention to personal hygiene to avoid infectious diseases. There's a hot spring below that we can use for bathing. As for waste, we built a separate system to contain it, and then use it as fertilizer to grow food. He smiled bitterly. We initially planned to adopt a sustainable development strategy here, but there are no farmers here, and we're not good at farming. Besides, the growing time for crops is too long. We couldn't wait. Junye looked at him and said faintly, your idea wasn't bad. He wondered to himself, if I were put in this situation, what would I do? Without thinking, the answer was already in his mind. He wouldn't become Li Zongju, he would become Kunba. After walking for a while, deep inside the cave, Junye vaguely saw light, like a silvery glow. It wasn't from a fire or a lamp, but from a type of green mineral on the cave walls. They emitted a faint light in the darkness. Although not very bright, it was enough for people to see their surroundings within 2 or 3 meters. As he followed Li Zongju, Junye asked casually, being so far away, how did you contact the Jianan region? Wasn't communication a problem? Hearing this, Li Zhongyu gave a faint smile and took out a Huaim 600 from his pocket. Jiang Yi nodded in understanding. You see, the signal on this brand of phone is indeed very good. Li Zhongyu scratched his head. Actually, there's a relay station on the island, also built by Huai. Jiang Yi couldn't help but laugh. In this respect, Huai is indeed superior. Before long, they arrived at the cave where Li Zhongyu and the others were living. But at the entrance, 2 men armed with guns stood guard. Who's there? The 2 asked vigilantly, raising their guns. It's me. I've brought the rescue team. Li Zhongyu stepped forward to reveal his face. The 2 men's eyes held a mixture of suspicion, a little joy, but mostly caution. Is this the rescue team from Huaxia that you mentioned? Li Zhongyu nodded. Yes, we're saved. We can follow their ship back to the mainland and no longer have to suffer from hunger and cold like this. Zheng Yai raised an eyebrow slightly. Li Zhongyu was being too optimistic. Life on the mainland was even worse than on the island. But once he brought them back, he and the Jiangnan region would naturally make arrangements for them, at least not letting them starve to death. However, the expressions of the 2 guards struck Zheng Yai as a bit strange. When they saw him and the others arrive, their faces were very complicated. What's this? Shouldn't people in desperate situations be overjoyed to see their saviors? He realized that things weren't so simple, but it didn't matter to him. He just wanted to take Li Zhongyu away, or more accurately, to get the stone in his possession that was suspected to be a god's origin. Li Zhongyu turned and smiled at Zhang Yai. Everyone, please wait here for a moment. Inside is where we live, and it might be a bit messy. I'll go and have them tie you up a bit to avoid offending your eyes. He pointed to some large rocks on the ground, inviting them to sit. Zhang Yi said flatly, no need. We'll just wait here. He took a step forward, looked into Li Zhongyu's eyes, and said with a meaningful smile, if there's anything to discuss, let's discuss it now. Time waits for no one, and we can't stay here for too long. Li Zhongyu swallowed, his expression a little unnatural as he turned away. He even covered his mouth with his hand in a slightly embarrassed gesture. As if to hide his awkwardness, he licked his lips and ran a hand through his hair. I'm just telling them to pack their things. It's nothing. With that, Li Zhongyu pulled the 2 guards and went deeper into the cave. The cave was a space of about 200 to 300 square meters. Inside, there were tents, cooking utensils, and even clothes hung up to dry. But the living area was kept very clean, with no scattered waste or garbage. In the center of the cave, dozens of people were sitting in a circle around a space illuminated by glowing stones dug from the ground. A middle-aged man, not tall but with a peculiar appearance, stood in the middle of the circle, giving a speech in a firm and powerful voice. The current situation is only a temporary difficulty. I believe the apocalypse will soon pass, and we will also be safe. Yesterday was cruel, and today is even crueler. But tomorrow will be beautiful. Most people have died in the night, and cannot see the sun of tomorrow. Therefore, everyone must persevere, not lose faith, and have hope for the future. His name was Mo Wenzhen, a businessman in the group who now served as a part-time pastor, and was one of their spiritual leaders. As his passionate speech ended, a sparse round of applause broke out. Although the surrounding victims looked somewhat tired and numb, after hearing his words, a spark of light flickered in many of their eyes. In these desperate times, people needed encouragement, needed someone to tell them that there was a tomorrow to live for. At a glance, this group was composed of people from various countries, a veritable rainbow team. In the apocalypse, they had chosen to rely on each other for warmth and overcome difficulties together. Li Zhongyu led his men in and excitedly told everyone, I've found our rescuers. The rescue team is ashore, and they will soon take us back. Hearing Li Zhongyu's words, everyone immediately jumped up from the ground and surrounded him. Really? Have people really come to save us? I knew it. This day would come. Someone was so emotional they burst into tears. Is it the Colombian Navy? A man with black-rimmed glasses asked excitedly. I knew it. Colombia would not abandon its citizens. I sent them hundreds of distress messages. They finally came. Thank God, thank Colombia. They did not abandon their people. The man with glasses knelt on the ground, tears in his eyes, and prayed devoutly. Hearing this, others also thought that the Colombian Naval Rescue Force had arrived. They were ecstatic. Great, if we can get to Colombia, we will definitely have a good life. Colombia is the greatest country in the world. Abundant supplies, happy people. People began to cheer with joy. After all, they had lived in misery for too long. Just a little hope was enough to make them dream. Seeing this, Li Zhongyu said with some dissatisfaction, it's a rescue ship from Huaxia. The joyful atmosphere suddenly froze. The man, Xuan, stared with wide eyes, in disbelief. What? A rescue ship from Huaxia? Mr. Li, why did you ask them for help and not Colombia? From the crowd, a foreign man with blonde hair, and a beard longer than his hair spoke up. I don't want to go to Huaxia. I am a citizen of Colombia. I will wait for the Colombian Navy to take me home. That is my constitutional right. From another direction, a thin, short, middle-aged man said in halting English, Mr. Lee, as a local official of Sinluo, I can tell you clearly that Huaxia is not an ideal country. I advise going to Colombia, or even Mali would be better. Jiang Yai's suspicion was justified. The wealthy people vacationing on this island, some of them did not want to take refuge in Huaxia. In fact, this debate had been going on for a long time. They were divided into 3 factions. One was the Huaxia faction, led by Li Zongyu, which advocated for seeking help from Huaxia, mostly consisting of Huaxians or overseas Chinese. The second was the foreign faction, who preferred to go to Western countries. The third was the neutral faction, who went with the flow and had no clear opinion. Anywhere was fine, as long as they were alive. Xiahaichen and the others were staunchly in the foreign faction. Several of them did not hesitate to refute Li Zongyu's view, believing he had caused them trouble. Li Zongyu rubbed his temples. We have tried countless times to seek help from all neighboring countries, but none of them responded. Now only Huaxia has agreed to save is. Let's all get on their ship. Survival is the most important thing. Li Zongyu's girlfriend, Zhang Weiwei, stepped to his side, firmly supporting him. Now is not the time to argue. Yanlu Island is becoming more and more dangerous. We're out of food, and the other survivors have started killing each other. If we wait any longer, I'm afraid we won't be waiting for rescue, but for death. A sharp voice rang out in the group. Oh, stop arguing. Let's go to Huaxia. After all, there's no other choice now. We can just stay there temporarily. If there's a way to leave later, we can go somewhere else, wouldn't that be better? She said proudly, don't worry, I know my way around leaving Huaxia. My mother and I left from there originally. Besides, my old man used to hold a high-ranking position there. She smiled smugly. I'll help everyone then. The girl was not tall, a little plump, and looked very fragile. The people in the group had known each other for a long time and knew she wasn't lying. Sun Nuangxi, also known as Xiao Yuer, her grandfather had been a local official, and her father and uncles all held important positions. But Sun Nuangxi had grown up abroad, and later emigrated decisively. Sun Nuangxi's words made Xiahaichen and the others think. At this moment, the part-time pastor Mo Wenjin also stepped forward. He spoke slowly but firmly, I don't see anything wrong with everyone going back to Huaxia together. Right now, we must consider how to survive. Other conflicts should be discussed later. Hearing Mo Wenjin speak, Xiuyuan couldn't help but sneer. Mr. Ma, you are a Huaxian, of course you want to go back to your hometown. Once you're back there, you'll be a big boss again. How can you be like his? The people here didn't fully understand what had happened outside. Some even thought that this was just a major blizzard, and that human civilization was still largely intact. Mo Wenjing said frankly, that's not the point. The point is where you can survive. He said pensively, the outside world may be much worse than we imagine. We must consider whether this is our only chance to survive. With that, he went to Li Zongyu's side. He agreed to go back to Huaxia. Li Zongyu looked at the hesitant people before him. Although each of them had their own flaws and there were conflicts among them, they had lived together for half a year. The feeling of sharing life and death made him reluctant to abandon anyone. No matter what. I have decided to go back to Huaxia with their ship. I hope everyone will join me one more time. Please trust me. The people looked at each other, whispering amongst themselves. This is an opportunity, but should we really go to the Huasi nation? We don't know anyone there. What would we do? They're from the Huasi nation. It's fine for the overseas Chinese, but we don't know the language. I don't like that country. I want to go to Colombia or Albania, even Mul would be fine. Don't they have an international humanitarian obligation to save us? In the crowd, an official named Xiahaichen frowned and thought for a long time before obediently walking over to Li Zongyu's side. Mr. Li, I believe you will lead everyone to a better life. Therefore, I've decided to follow you. Xiahaichen was known within the group for his cleverness, he never did anything that would put him at a disadvantage. Consequently, when he chose to go to the Huasi nation, many people were swayed and one by one, they stood with Li Zongyu. In the end, under their persuasion, the majority of the people chose to leave. With the Huasi nation's rescue ship, only 5 or 6 people stubbornly remain. I have sent a distress signal to Colombia. They will definitely come. This is a right I am entitled to. The ones who stayed were all Colombians. They firmly believed that a Colombian rescue ship would cross tens of thousands of miles of ocean to bring them home. Li Zongyu and the others tried to persuade them to no avail and finally had to reluctantly respect their decision. A woman named Zhang Weiwei thought for a moment and then said to everyone, since we're about to board the ship and leave, let's leave some food and clothes for them. Hearing this, most of the group immediately took a step back. No one wanted to volunteer. Xiahaichen sighed and said, Weiwei, your idea is very good, but whether we can even leave is still an unknown. I think we should remain skeptical of this Huasi nation ship. Besides, even if we get on board, Who knows how they will treat us? It's crucial to keep some supplies. For ourselves. Therefore, I want to keep my food and water. He clutched his backpack tightly, looking exactly like Golem guarding the One Ring, ready to fight to the death with anyone who tried to take it. Sahachan's attitude reflected the thoughts of the vast majority. They silently agreed. No one was willing to give up their own supplies for the Colombians. Some even snickered with Schadenfreude. They chose not to go on their own. What does that have to do with this? Everyone is an adult. They have to live with the consequences of their choices. Jian Weiwei was helpless. She could only quietly set aside a portion of her own food and water. A few others like her also left a small amount of supplies. Li Zongyu counted the number of people who had decided to leave and told them to wait there for a moment while he went to find Zhang Yai and Zhu Yun. At this time, Zhang Yai and the others weren't idle. Among the accompanying sailors was an experienced one who quickly found a nearby hot spring. Zhang Yai had 2 crewmen stand guard at the entrance of the cave, while he, along with Chukir and Zhu Yun, went to the spring. It was a place shrouded in mist, deep underground, with a bubbling hot spring pool that emitted the smell of sulfur. Chukir said happily, "This kind of spring water is very good for the body. It can also treat skin diseases. There are even rumors that it can help a woman's skin stay young." Zhang Yai raised an eyebrow and asked teasingly, "What's wrong? Want to take a dip here for a while?" Chukir's face flushed. "Don't be like that. We're busy with work right now. I wouldn't want to waste everyone's time." But Zhu Yun felt an itch all over her body. On the ship, bathing was a luxury. The supply of fresh water was limited, so everyone had to restrict their usage. Even she was only allowed to take a hot bath once a week, for no more than 10 minutes at a time. So, upon seeing such a wonderful hot spring, she felt an itch all over, desperate to jump in and wash her entire body. However, if she knew that the water restrictions only applied to her, she would probably die of anger. Fresh water for a long sea voyage was indeed limited, but the amount of water Zhang Yai always carried with him was practically endless. "Zhang Yai, I want to bathe here," Zhu Yun said, looking at Zhang Yai with an expression that brooked no refusal. Zhang Yai rubbed his chin. He had originally intended to bring some of the hot spring water back, but bathing in a hot spring outside of its natural setting would lose its meaning. So he nodded. "Alright, go ahead and bathe here first. We'll figure things out after." Receiving Zhang Yai's nod, Shukir and Zhu Yun were overjoyed. Zhang Yai had a few sailors stand guard outside while he went down to soak in the hot spring. The spring had multiple pools. Zhu Yun asked Zhang Yai for a towel, and went to a different spot. As for Zhang Yai, he naturally soaked with Shukir, where they could help each other scrub their backs, among other things. It had to be said, it had been a long time since Zhang Yai had soaked in a hot spring. The last time he remembered was a year ago, when he went on a team-building trip to a hot spring with some colleagues from his company. Thinking of the past, Zhang Yai couldn't help but feel a little sentimental. Those colleagues and friends were all dead, lost in the apocalypse. Fortunately, he now had other people by his side. Like Chukir. The two of them lay in the pool together, enjoying the feeling of the hot spring relaxing their bodies. The soothing sensation penetrated every muscle. It was truly comfortable. People who love to bathe know that the most perfect time for a bath is in the cold of winter. The colder it is outside, the more pleasant it is to soak in a hot spring. Li Zongju came looking for Zhang Yai. Learning that Zhang Yai was soaking in the hot spring, he just stood there and waited obediently. More than half an hour later, Zhang Yai was done. Soaking for too long could make one dizzy. He shouted towards the adjacent cave, "Alright, let's go." As he spoke, Zhang Yai drank the watermelon juice in his hand. Soaking in a hot spring while enjoying a drink was one of the great pleasures of life. But after calling several times, there was no answer from the other side. Shukir frowned with worry. "She hasn't fainted from the heat, has she?" Seeing this, Zhang Yi said to her, "You go check on her." Shukir was surprised. Zhang Yai's straightforward approach was a little hard for her to understand. Zhang Yi laughed coldly. "I just don't like inviting trouble. A young lady with a special status like Zhu Yunku. If I accidentally saw her body, who knows how she might try to entangle me. That's no different from being a pervert, and I'd have no way to reason myself out of it." Shukir immediately understood Zhang Yi's meaning and went to find Zhu Yun. A moment later, Shukir came back, supporting a red-faced Zhu Yun. It seemed she had soaked for too long, and the blood had rushed to her face. But when she saw Zhang Yi, a trace of resentment flickered in her eyes. She had clearly given him such an opportunity. Why hadn't Zhang Yi fallen into her trap? What was she supposed to do now? "Let's go." Zhang Yi didn't show much concern, just said the words faintly, then turned and walked out, causing Zhu Yun to grit her teeth in frustration. Soon, they met up with the people from Li Zongyu's group. Since they were survivors on Lava Flow Island, they could be temporarily called the Lava Flow Group. Zhang Yi glanced over them and even saw some familiar faces. Not as acquaintances, but some of these people were wealthy businessmen from the Huasi nation, and there were even local officials from Tianhai City. Zhang Yi had seen them on television before. It made sense. Those who could afford to vacation on an island in the middle of the ocean were bound to have some status. What ordinary person had the leisure and money to do such things? Just then, Zhang Yi suddenly heard an excited voice. Ah, it's Alice. You're Alice. From the lava flow group, a girl named Su Nuoxi ran out joyfully, heading straight for Zhu Yun. Senior, do you still remember me? Zhu Yun looked at the girl in front of her, thought for a moment, and then said in surprise, You're from the Li family. You're here too. Su Nuoxi was trembling with excitement. Senior, I'm so happy to see you here. Are you also part of the rescue team? Zhu Yun brushed her hair back and nodded with a smile. My uncle is in charge of the Jiangnan Greater region of the Huasi Nation. This time, a friend and I are leading the team to rescue everyone. Su Nuoxi's eyes widened in excitement. Oh my god, that's wonderful. With you here, Senior, I feel so much more at ease. I was so scared at first, not knowing who we would encounter. But with you here, I'm relieved. Su Nuoxian. Zhu Yun had both attended the Massachusetts Institute of Technology MIT. Of course, not based on merit, but by using money to secure a spot. People of their status also had their own circles in Columbia. It was normal for them to know each other, even inevitable. No matter where they went, people from the Huasi Nation had a habit of sticking together. Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow but paid it no mind. He had everyone do a head count, and then said to them, Before I take you all away, I must first announce some rules of discipline. After everyone had gathered, Zhang Yi announced the rules for being on his ship. After you board, I will distribute the necessary food and fresh water for survival, and ensure your living conditions. But you must obey all of my commands unconditionally. Of course, I won't ask you to kill, commit arson, or sell yourselves, but at the very least, no one is to cause me any trouble at sea. For this trip, we have expended a great deal of time, effort, and resources. And sea travel is fraught with risks. For example, sea monsters, pirates, and bad weather. Zhang Yi crossed his arms and said sternly, I will not tolerate any behavior that causes me trouble. Anyone who dares to violate this rule. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I will throw that person into the icy sea. These words sent a shiver down many people's spines. How terrifying. This rescue team from the Huasi Nation has no humanity at all, speaking to us like this when we're in distress. Alright, now I regret it. Su Nuoxi also said to Zhu Yun, your team member is really scary. Don't you manage him? How can he talk like that? It's damaging the image of the Huasi Nation. Zhu Yun didn't want to lose face in front of her junior, so she said, he's always like that. I'm just too lazy to say anything. As if to supplement her statement, she continued, but he's doing this to get everyone back safely. Everyone should cooperate with him. Hearing the crowd's murmuring, Zhang Yi smiled faintly. Don't say I didn't give you a chance. Anyone who thinks I'm a ruthless dictator can choose to stay right now. The choice is yours. The crowd buzzed, their expressions showing great dissatisfaction with Zhang Yi's attitude, and they were worried about life on board the ship. But not a single person chose to leave. After all, staying here most likely meant waiting for death. No one could guarantee that a second ship would ever come to this island. Seeing that no one had any more objections, Zhang Yi continued, now, I require you to hand over all weapons and communication devices on your person. Hiding weapons is especially forbidden. Firearms, bullets, daggers, even nail clippers are not to be hidden. Someone in the crowd asked sarcastically, so what if our nails get long and we want to cut them? Zhang Yi squinted and smiled. You can sharpen them on the floorboards. Li Zhongyu hurriedly spoke up. Everyone, please trust the people sent by the Huasi Nation. They are here to save yous. Only by trusting them can we leave this godforsaken place. The people from the lava flow group reluctantly handed over all the weapons and communication devices in their possession. In total, more than 10 guns were collected, but there wasn't much ammunition left. There were also knives, iron rods, and many other items. But Zhang Yi understood that if people really wanted to fight, anything could become a weapon. He just wanted to minimize the chances of this group getting themselves killed. Zhang Yi wasn't worried about them causing trouble at sea. He just hated complications. At this moment, Sehaichen came before Zhang Yi, nodding and bowing. Sir, my name is Sehaichen from Xinlu. Thank you, Tar, for coming to rescue us. Please accept my utmost respect. As he spoke, he bowed a full 90 degrees to Zhang Yi, the movement practiced and smooth. Zhang Yi saw that this old man was quite sensible. He just nodded, saying nothing more. Zhang Yi didn't like opportunists like him, but he couldn't say he hated them either. This type of person integrated easily into society. If there is anything you need me to do, please just command me. You are my savior. From now on, my life belongs to you. Sehaichen continued to flatter Zhang Yi. He spoke with such emotion that his eyes welled up with tears. Zhang Yi said softly, just manage yourself well and don't cause me any trouble. Yes, I will absolutely follow your instructions. After straightening up, Sehaichen turned to the others in the Yanlu group and shouted at the top of his lungs, long live Huaxia, Long live Mr. Jun. It must be said, a few of Shahecheng's friends in the group actually shouted along. The others looked on with disgust, but some shamelessly followed suit, endlessly fawning over Jun Yai. We entrust our lives to you, sir, please, you must bring us back alive. You are our savior, an angel sent by God. A torrent of praise was directed at Jun Yai. Just over an hour ago, they were disdainfully assessing the Hoaxian rescue team, complaining that it wasn't people from countries like Colombia. Jun Yai didn't care. He understood what kind of people they were, mostly officials or merchants from other countries who had come here on vacation with their families. He had no goodwill towards them, nor did he care for their flattery. But for people like Shahecheng, such acts were crucial. No matter how coldly Jun Yai treated them, they had to try to win his favor. Words and dignity were worthless now, but gaining Jun Yai's favor could mean a chance to survive at a critical moment. They were always this cunning. Before setting off, Jun Yai asked Li Zongjiu, "Is everyone here?" Li Zongjiu sighed helplessly. A few people refused to go. They are all Colombians, still waiting for the Colombian rescue team to come for them. Jun Yai nodded. Oh. If they don't want to go with us, then so be it. I am a person who always respects the opinions of others. As he spoke, he glanced slightly at the sailors beside him, his right hand casually swiping across his neck twice. Seeing this, the two sailors immediately understood. The secret of the god's origin absolutely could not be revealed, especially not to Colombians. The group left the cave. As they departed, those who chose to stay behind saw the empty cave and a sudden, immense fear gripped their hearts. They hesitated for a long time, but ultimately decided to stay and wait for their country's rescue ship. But as they waited, footsteps echoed from the cave entrance. The few foreigners were extremely surprised to see the sailors who had already left returning. What do you want? The two sailors smiled, drew their silenced pistols, and soon a series of muffled sounds echoed through the cave. Kiu, Kiu. A moment later, the two sailors caught up with the main group. Sorry, we just had to use the restroom. Zhang Ye looked at them, and their eyes met. He understood that everything had been taken care of. Fall back in line. The two men returned to the formation. This exchange made some people suspicious. Mo Wenzhen, for instance, seemed to have guessed something. But he said nothing, just shook his head slightly and continued towards the port. The Yanlu group saw the shattered corpses along the way and couldn't help but be startled. These bodies were still fresh. How were they killed? Mo Wenzhen couldn't help but ask. Jun Yai replied nonchalantly, I killed them. Shahecheng immediately chimed in with praise. A good kill. These people were surely plotting something evil and were bravely killed by Mr. Jun and his sailors. What a relief. Sun Nuangxi walked beside Ju Yunke. Leveraging her relationship with Ji Yunke, and considering herself a descendant of nobility, she always acted superior. Even Zhang Yai was seen by her as someone ordered to rescue a little princess like herself. Seeing the many dead bodies on the ground, her face turned pale with fear. She clutched her chest, and couldn't help but say to Zhang Yai, don't you think it was too cruel to kill them? Zhang Yai was stunned, then frowned, a bemused expression on his face as he stared at Sun Nuangxi. They were bandits. Are you feeling sorry for them? Sun Nuangxi shook her head. No, they weren't bandits. They were just a group of pitiful people struggling to survive. Before, they did it for survival, but now that you're here, there was clearly an opportunity to take them with you. Why did you have to kill them? Sun Nuangxi glared at Zhang Yai. I have to criticize you. What you did will greatly damage the international image of Huaxia. Sun Nuangxi's words made Zhang Ye stop in his tracks. Along the way, she had only spoken with Chu Yunke. Zhang Yai was well aware of her identity. Are you a citizen of Huaxia? He asked coldly, his eyes fixed on her. However, Sun Nuangxi said nonchalantly, at least my father once lived on that land and contributed a lot to it. Besides, I am criticizing you from a humanitarian standpoint. It has nothing to do with which country I am from. A smirk played on Zhang Yai's lips. Those who knew him knew that the woman before him was in for trouble. Contributed. Aha, what a great contribution your father made. Chu Yunke stepped forward and said to Zhang Yai, let it go. Don't bother with her. She's never known hardship since she was a child and knows nothing of the world. She leaned close to his ear and whispered, she even revealed her family's background online before. Why bother arguing with such a foolish girl? But Zhang Ye said coldly, I hate people who talk from the sidelines without knowing the pain of others. Sun Nuangxi was still eloquently defending her ideas. When I was studying in Colombia, I went to help the homeless and the starving children in Africa every year. I believe that people should be united and love each other, not hate each other. Her gaze turned pensive. This might be a bit difficult for people in your country to understand. After all, the people of Huaxia are inherently selfish and indifferent. These words made the faces of some of the Huaxians in the Yanlu group change. Li Zonghu's girlfriend, Zhang Weiwei, pulled her arm and said with a frown, you should talk less. Of course, taking everything from a one-sided perspective, Sun Nuangxi pursed her lips and held her head high. But that's what is see. She pointed at Zhang Yai. Look, what he did was so excessive. Why must he use killing to solve problems? For a very long time, Zhang Yai had thought that the so-called saints and brain-dead people only existed on the internet and were hard to find in real life. But today, his eyes were open. His mind couldn't comprehend how such a person could exist in the world. Perhaps it was because she had drunk too much imported milk powder as a child. He didn't answer Sun Nuangxi, just said calmly, let's go. We'll go to another place nearby first. With that, he changed direction, not heading to the port but turning towards another part of the island. Li Zongju quickly asked, Mr. Jun, where are we going? Jiang Yi said, to the den of the villains. Li Zongju thought for a moment and suddenly understood. You mean you want to collect their supplies? That's right. On a long sea voyage, supplies can easily run short. Everyone thought Zhang Yai wanted to collect spoils of war, so they didn't think much of it and followed him. Along the way, seeing that Zhang Yai didn't refute her, Sun Nuangxi became even more emboldened. She thought that Zhang Yai knew her identity and was intimidated by her father's authority, so he could only endure it. Thus she became more and more outrageous with her words. To be honest, Huaxia really has a lot of problems. The population is too large, which leads to a generally low quality of the populace. I don't mean to be sarcastic, I just want to comment objectively and rationally. If that weren't the case, my parents wouldn't have sent me to Columbia since I was a child and had me study at mid. This time when I go back, I feel it's necessary to change the perspective of the people there a little, but it will probably be in vain. She deliberately belittled Huaxia to prove that her leaving the country was the right choice and to show off her own nobility. A faint smile touched Zhang Yai's lips. He said nothing, just quietly waited for something. Before long, they arrived at the old headquarters of the villain group. It was also a cave, but not underground. Just outside, everyone's expression changed. The ground was covered in dark bloodstains and bones. They were clearly human bones, and some of them still had chunks of flesh that hadn't been cleaned off. At the cave entrance, there was a large chopping block with axes and cleavers on it, exuding a disgusting, fishy smell. Let's go inside and take a look. Zhang Ye's military uniform had a mask that could block the stench, so he wasn't worried. He even smiled, and invited everyone to go inside. Li Zongyu said, the supplies must be stored inside. Let's go in and look. This is also to prepare for our next journey. Sun Nuangx held her nose and shouted, why do you have to make us go in here? Can't you just go in and find them yourselves? Zhang Ye lost his patience, strode over, and grabbed a handful of her hair. He used a lot of force, and Sun Nuangxi cried out in pain. It hurts, let go. Are you trying to pull my hair out? Zhang Ye smiled. Didn't you tell me to be compassionate before? Here, I'll show you what kind of people I killed. See these bones? That's just a small appetizer. The main course is inside. Ignoring Sun Nuangx's resistance, he dragged her into the cave. The stench inside was nauseating. Chu Yunque wanted to say a few words of persuasion, but seeing Zhang Yai's cold eyes, she was too scared to step forward. Inside the cave, Zhang Yai threw Sun Nuangxi to the ground. With tears in her eyes, Sun Nuangxi held her nose, about to curse, but when she looked up, she was so frightened she screamed. Inside the cave, bodies were hanging everywhere. In the apocalypse, food was precious, and they didn't want to waste any. There was even blood tofu. Everything here was like a living hell. Sun Nuangxi's eyes were about to lose focus. She could only cry out in despair. She ran backward in a frenzy, but accidentally put her hand into something soft and wet. Splash, Sun Nuangxi looked back and saw that she had knocked over a basin. The water inside spilled out, drenching her. Two lifeless white eyes rolled out, staring blankly at her. Sun Nuangxi was about to go mad. Although they had experienced many tragic things on Yanlu Island after the apocalypse, she had never seen a living hell like this. Zhang Ye smiled. You see, this is the food processing plant of the people you said we should be merciful to. Now, do you think those people are pitiful, or are the people hanging on this wall more pitiful? That's right, maybe some of these people are your friends. Sun Nuangxi was so horrified that she almost completely collapsed. Her eyes rolled back, and she fainted on the spot. The people who followed behind also saw the scene. Some couldn't help but vomit on the spot. A blonde, blue-eyed foreigner named Bai Mo held his head and shouted, "Oh my god, Lord, this place is like hell. Are there demons here?" They had seen dead people before, and thought their will was strong enough. But human nature made it impossible for them to bear such a sight. Zhang Ye looked at them curiously and asked Li Zongyu, "What's wrong? You've never eaten this before." Li Zongyu's face was ashen. It was clearly a great psychological trial for him, but he replied with a hint of anger, "We are human beings, not beasts. How could we do such a thing?" His girlfriend, Zhang Weiwei, also stepped forward angrily, looking directly at Zhang Yai without a trace of fear. "Mr. Zhang, please do not insult our dignity. Even if we starve to death, we could not eat something like that." Zhang Ye said with a smile, "Then how did you meet your food needs?" Jiang Weiwei replied, because this is a tourist island, it's stocked with a lot of food year-round. Initially, we lived in the hotel on the island, and the food in the warehouse sustained us for several months. After that, Zhongyu and the others went out to hunt. She continued, the marine resources around Lava Flow Island are very rich. We can survive by eating seafood. But Zhang Ye pointed out, this is a tropical region where the temperature has dropped to 20 degrees. I'm afraid all the fish in the coastal waters have disappeared. Jiang Weiwei blinked. Near Lava Flow Island, there is a species of giant sea turtle, which is one of the local specialties. Its vitality is very strong, so we have mainly relied on it for survival. Jiang Ye lowered his eyes, then suddenly looked up at Li Zongyu. Is the sea turtle soup delicious? Li Zongyu's gaze shifted to the side. It's good enough to be full. How can one ask about the taste? He pulled Jiang Weiwei aside and told her to lead the students out. This place was too bloody and unsuitable for them. Zheng Yai had only brought them here to teach Su Nuoxi a lesson, to make her shut up and not bother him. At the same time, it was a warning to the others. Du Yunque had already run outside to vomit uncontrollably. She was probably cursing Zheng Yai wildly in her heart for making her see such things. However, for Zheng Yai and the sailors, these scenes were a small matter. When they lived in Tanhai City, they had witnessed far more tragic sights. For example, have you ever witnessed hundreds of thousands of zombies attacking a human encampment, then tearing people apart limb by limb while they were still alive, leaving only bones behind? A small matter. It was all a small matter. Zhang Yai glanced at the unconscious Su Nuoxi and felt a little bored. All bark and no bite. He had originally planned to make her a special dish of 9, layered authentic large intestine, but she was lucky enough to have fainted from fright. True to his character, Zhang Yai really wanted to just throw the woman off the ship and leave her to her fate on the island. But firstly, Xu Zhen had requested that the entire Lava Flow group be brought back to prevent any secrets from being leaked. Secondly, with Li Zongyu and the others there, Zhang Yai couldn't handle things too ruthlessly. So, he called 2 men from the Lava Flow group to carry Su Nuoxi away, and they left this demonic lair for the port. Soon, they approached the port. When they left, the place had been deserted, with only a field of corpses. But upon their return, the area near the port was crowded with people, as noisy as a flea market. Zhang Ye keenly noticed that the corpses near the port had vanished. He understood what had happened but didn't comment on it. After all, such things were very common. The Jin Feng was still docked at the port. Old Tian had every sailor armed with a rifle, standing guard strictly, not allowing any refugees to board. But there were too many refugees here, including the local residents. The entire port was overflowing. A quick glance revealed thousands of people, and more were pouring in from other parts of the island. Some of the shrewder ones, braving the 20-degree temperature, were even trying to climb onto the ship from the sea. Old Tian had no choice but to fire warning shots into the air and use rubber bullets to drive them back. Get back, get back, our captain isn't here right now. Don't come any closer, or I'll have to open fire. Old Tian was not a merciful person. He just knew that Zhang Yai had come to the island to pick people up and couldn't be sure if the people in front of him were the targets. Therefore, he didn't dare to shoot indiscriminately. But this action, conversely, emboldened some of them. Some people took out gold Rolex watches, trying to bribe Old Tian. I have over 10 billion in savings, just take me with you, and I'll give you half. This watch is the down payment. Some held their children, trying to appeal to his pity. Please, let my child and me go, if not, we'll die on this island sooner or later. Shouldn't women and children be prioritized at a time like this? Hey, you all get out of the way, let us on the ship first. Some people started citing their connections, saying their father was a high-ranking official in some department of the Huasi nation, or a senior leader in the Jianmen Greater region. Some knelt down and kowtowed, begging Old Tian to let them on the ship. Several thousand people clamored, all with the same request, to be taken away from this hellish place. There were so many people that the pushing and shoving caused quite a few to fall into the sea, their tragic cries echoing as they froze in the cold water. Du Yunque stared, stunned. Why are there so many people still on the island? It's a tropical island. The people who come here for vacation are originally wealthy. How could they let themselves go hungry? Jiang Yi said with a cold smile. Besides, even if the food runs out, isn't there still a reserve food supply? Du Yunque looked at Zheng Yi in astonishment. Reserve food supply? You mean the seafood in the ocean? Zhang Yi said faintly, there was a famine one year, and many people starved to death. Emperor Hui of Jin said, why don't they eat minced meat? Everyone laughed at Emperor Hui for being a fool. But, if you think about it from another perspective, that sentence is actually very terrifying. Du Yunque suddenly understood Zhang Yi's meaning. Combined with the hellish scene she had just witnessed, her skin crawled. Let's go. We don't have time to waste here. There are many pitiful people in the world, I can't pay attention to all of them. Zhang Yi raised his gun and fired a warning shot into the air, immediately attracting the attention of the crowd. Their combat uniforms were too conspicuous. One look and it was obvious they were from the ship. Some smart people immediately rushed over to plead, "Please, take us with you. I am from the Hosi Nation. Listen to my accent, it's perfect. I'll work for the Hosi Nation if I can get on the ship." A group of foreigners also showed off their abilities. Many of them knew some Chinese, but their accents were easily distinguishable. Jiang Yi said coldly, "Everyone get out of the way. We'll discuss your situation after we've boarded the ship." But those people weren't stupid. Without a promise from Jiang Yi, they wouldn't leave. "No, you have to promise us first. Take us with you. We don't want to stay on this island for another second." This place was truly a living hell. Jiang Yi saw that some in the crowd were even planning to make a move, their vicious eyes proving they had killed many people. He chuckled coldly. It seemed a few of them wanted to capture them, and then seize the ship. Yu Yun and the others stood behind Jiang Yi, their faces filled with sorrow, not knowing what to do. Do Yun muttered, "There are too many people. The Jin Fen can't possibly carry them all. Otherwise." She didn't finish her sentence. If it weren't for that, given her style, she really would have taken these people with them. As for the people in the lava flow group, they were now extremely glad they had followed Jiang Yi out of the caves. Look at how many people were in front of them, begging to go, yet they weren't being taken. Jiang Yi drew his revolver and, without a word, aimed directly at the two fair-skinned men who had just been pretending to be from the Hosi Nation. Bang, bang, he fired 2 shots. The first shot killed a man from Nahom. Seeing someone die, a look of fear finally appeared on the refugees' faces. "I'll say it one last time, get out of the way." All the crew members understood the signal, immediately raising their assault rifles and pointedly cocking them with a loud click. As long as Jiang Yi gave the order, they would open fire without hesitation, killing anyone who stood in their way. Some of the people blocking their path retreated in fear, and a path gradually opened up. Jiang Yi stepped forward. Suddenly, with a loud clamor, everyone around them knelt down. "Please save us. If we stay here, we'll all die," pleaded a blonde, bluey woman, her face full of sorrow and tears welling in her eyes. Jiang Yi didn't even listen, he had no patience for such things. "A man," kowtowed repeatedly. "I know there are too many people, you can't look after everyone. But can you let my son on the ship? He's only 8 years old, his future is still bright." Jiang Yi led the lava flow group forward through the kneeling crowd. It was worth noting that in the face of such pitiful moral dilemmas, Jiang Yi remained emotionless. He had felt this way for a long time. When he lived in the Yulu residential area, the neighbors who had once tried to stab him had begged him just like this. Jiang Yi was not moved. But how could Yu Yun have ever experienced such a scene? This young lady had lived in Blizzard City even after the apocalypse. Her biggest trouble was probably not being able to eat fresh vegetables or use the latest cosmetics. A woman from the Hosi Nation, holding a child in her arms, saw the reluctance on Yu Yun's face and, as if grasping a final lifeline, shuffled forward on her knees. A crew member immediately pointed his gun at her. "What are you trying to do?" The woman didn't dare to move forward, only holding the child up high, crying and begging Yu Yun, "For the sake of our shared homeland, please save my child." Yu Yun couldn't bear it anymore. She pulled on Jiang Yi's sleeve. Jiang Yi turned to look at her, his gaze very cold. Yu Yun gritted her teeth and said, "At least take our fellow countrymen with us. There's still space on the ship. A few hundred more people won't be a problem." Her words were overheard by the people around them, who immediately saw a glimmer of hope. They hurriedly shouted, "I am from the Hosi Nation. I am from the Hosi Nation. Fellow countrymen, take me with you. Shouldn't people from the Hosi Nation help each other?" Jiang Yi frowned. He had never been abroad and hadn't had much contact with foreigners, but he had been scammed quite a few times. Were all the people who scammed him foreigners? He looked at the mother and child. Although the mother was somewhat gaunt, her graceful demeanor was still visible. The people who came to this lava flow island for vacation, whether from the Hosi Nation or overseas Chinese, how many of them weren't people who had once enjoyed a life of luxury? Jiang Yi was not a cold-blooded and heartless animal, but what he cared about most were his own interests. Taking these people would undoubtedly cause him a lot of trouble. And he was a person who hated trouble. Just then, someone in the crowd started leading the singing of the Hosi Nation's national anthem. Gradually, the port filled with the heroic sound of singing. Their faces were wary, but their voices soared. All eyes were fixed on Jiang Yi, filled with hope and desperation. A crowd of foreigners had also mixed in, mouthing the words as if they knew the song. Even more pathetically, a group of blonde-haired, blue-eyed foreigners were there, also pretending to sing. Jiang Yi thought to himself, it wouldn't be impossible to take some people back. According to his prior discussion with Zhu Zheng, bringing some people back to supplement the labor force for Tianhai City was part of the plan. These people could be fed a few simple meals and put to work. It was cheap and efficient. But he couldn't possibly take so many. Shukir noticed the hesitation in Jiang Yi's heart. She moved closer and said, "Take the people from the Hosi Nation back." The population in Tianhe is sparse right now, and the major bases also need more manpower. Keeping them still has its uses. Chukir understood Zhang Yai's thoughts best. He would never do anything pointless. This reason was more than sufficient, so Zhang Yai nodded. That's right. Tianhe is in need of a labor force right now. Then he said to Zhu Yung, out of respect for you, I can take the Huaxins back. This was the first time Zhang Yai had ever listened to Zhu Yung's advice. She was overjoyed, like a child given candy. She cheered happily, all Huaxins, gather here. Zhang Yi said loudly, everyone must undergo a check. Only citizens of Huaxia can board the ship. Once on board, you must follow all arrangements. Otherwise, you will be thrown off. The crowd cheered. The Huaxians were incredibly moved, their faces beaming with joy. But most of the people on the island were foreigners, and they were not happy. Someone pointed at a white person in the Yanlu group and shouted, why is he, a foreigner, allowed to board? It's not fair. That's right, it's not fair. Some people found a breakthrough and quickly joined in. Baimo was terrified and rushed over to hug Zhang Yai's thigh. Ah, Mr. Zhang, I am a Huaxian in spirit. I can swear to the god I worship, as soon as I get back, I will change my nationality. Zhang Yai couldn't help but laugh. He glanced at the noisy crowd and said with a cold smile, fairness. What is that? Do you think I came here to lecture you about fairness? If you have the ability, go and ask your own country to come and save you. Don't stand here screaming. The crowd grew more chaotic, the dissatisfaction of the foreigners now uncontrollable. In the crowd, a few foreign men slowly walked towards Zhang Yai, then suddenly drew their guns and fired at him, and those around him. But the bullets seemed to sink into the sea, without a ripple. Zhang Yai didn't even bother to look at them. He drew 2 pistols and fired continuously into the crowd. Firing into a dense crowd was an extremely dangerous act, very likely to cause accidental casualties. But for Zhang Yai, this was impossible. Zhang Yai emptied his magazines, blowing the heads off all the gunmen in the crowd. Not just those who fired, but also those he simply didn't like the look of. The island was not short of murderers, at least a third of them had killed before. Regardless of whether they intended to target him or not, Zhang Yi felt no guilt in killing them. All the sailors raised their guns in alert. Zhang Yai reloaded his magazines with one hand. 40 more bullets in hand. Anyone else have an opinion? Who would dare have an opinion now? The ability Zhang Yai displayed made everyone think they had seen a Superman. There were indeed some people on the island who had awakened abilities, so they had some understanding of this. It was just that they had never seen a superhuman as powerful and terrifying as Zhang Yai. Everyone backed away in fear, no longer daring to block his path. Zhang Yai led the people down to the port. Zhang Yi said to Old Tian, strictly enforce the control standards. Do not let any non-Huaxians on board. Old Tian scratched his head. Mr. Zhang, how do we determine if they are Huaxian or not? It might be a bit difficult to ask them for their ID cards now. Figure it out yourself, Zhang Yi said nonchalantly. If you always want me to make the decisions, what are subordinates like you for? Zhang Yi had the people from the Yanlu group board the ship first. Rooms had already been prepared for them on the second level below deck. The space wasn't large, but it was more than enough to accommodate them and ensure their basic survival. As for Old Tian, he called over a few sailors and immediately began the recruitment process. Everyone, form 2 lines. 1 person at a time. Non-Huaxians can leave first to avoid wasting time here. Old Tian shouted through a loudspeaker, then said to the sailors, this is when chaos is most likely to break out. Some dogs will get desperate. Don't show any mercy. Just shoot to kill. The sailors nodded with cold smiles. To them, this scene was a small matter. When the apocalypse came, the slaughter at Jiao port to fight for survival had been far more brutal. Soon, 2 long lines had formed at the port. Zhang Yai didn't board the ship but stood behind, observing, to prevent any chaos. From his spatial dimension, he directly took out 2 sofas for himself, and Zhu Qir to sit on. The 2 of them snacked on melon seeds while watching the show. Zhu Yung didn't get this special treatment. She huffed softly, crossed her arms, and stood to one side, looking like their 2 maids. Feeling it was inappropriate, she moved further away. The 2 long lines were a mix of all kinds of people, none wanting to miss this opportunity. Even if they weren't Huaxian, they were going to try their luck. The first person in line came before Old Tian. Old Tian rolled his eyes. Palace Jade Nectar Wine. The person was stunned for a moment, then hurriedly replied, 181 cups. Old Tian laughed and gave a thumbs up towards the back. Passed. Go wait on deck. The person was so excited he nearly fainted on the spot and hurried onto the ship. The people behind him seemed to understand the test and immediately started bustling. It was nothing else but a cram session on Huaxian trivia. Another person came up. Old Tian, what is a gathering of heroes? The person quickly smiled and said, what gathering of heroes? I think it's a meeting of radishes. Thus, this person also passed smoothly. He even looked back smugly, giving a victory sign, then hurried up the gangway. As he passed Zhang Yai and the others, he bowed politely, expressing his gratitude. The sailors' daily entertainment was playing these kinds of games, watching TV shows, or listening to the radio, so they had plenty of fun and unique questions, ensuring no repeats. I ask you, in what situation does 1 + 1 = 3? What kind of question is this? This was a man with a bushy beard, who looked bewildered after hearing the question. Old Tayan rolled his eyes. I can tell at a glance you're not one of us. No, not a Hoxton. Scram. The person quickly said, don't, big brother, boss. Listen to my accent, I'm a genuine Cantonese. Old Tayan snorted coldly. So what if you're Cantonese? Don't Cantonese people watch the New Year's gala? If you can't answer, you can't get on the ship. The man looked like he was about to cry. It's not a crime to not watch the New Year's gala. Of course, Old Tayan knew this guy was Hoxton. In terms of accent, very few foreigners could pronounce it so accurately. Alright, get on. The man was so grateful he was moved to tears. Fearing Old Tayan would change his mind, he hurried onto the ship. Next was a skinny young man, thin as a monkey, with a strange accent. Hello, boss, you are good. I am a Hoxton, a genuine Hoxton. Look, I even have my ID card. Can you let me on? Old Tayan took the ID card and looked at it. On it were written the 3 characters, Jin Shantai. He looked at Jin Shantai and said, but you look like a Sinluo person, and your accent is a bit strange. Jin Shantai panicked and quickly explained, no, I'm not a Sinluo person. I'm a genuine Western region native. My accent is from eating too many grilled skewers. Old Tayan rubbed his chin and suddenly asked, what shampoo do you use? Shidanking. I use Shidanking, Jin Shantai replied quickly. Old Tayan laughed heartily. I use Shidanking too. Alright, you can go up. The skinny young man nodded and bowed, nearly touching the ground. Thank you, boss, for accepting my pass. But just then, someone from behind suddenly shouted in the Sinluo language, he's not a Hoxton. He's a Sinluo person. It's all fake. He's a fraud. Don't let him on the ship. Jin Shantai turned his head and saw it was his old friend, Koizi Hao. Jin Shantai said contemptuously, look, I have a Hoxton ID card. I love Hoxia the most. I asked you to come with me before, but you didn't agree. Now you regret it, right? Koizi Hao's face turned red with anger. Chinese is too hard to learn. I can't learn it. Jin Shantai immediately glared. Where is it hard? Where is it hard? It's always been like this. Koizi Hao was so angry he was about to explode, but he could only watch as Jin Shantai smugly boarded the ship. Because they knew the power of Zhang Yai and the others, and because Zhang Yai was ruthless, drawing his gun to kill if things didn't go his way, the order at the scene was generally stable. Although some people were identified as foreigners, at most they would kneel and kowtow, crying and rolling on the ground. But this method was useless. The people from Tianhai had seen far more horrific hells, who would be easily softened. The process of checking the people boarding the ship went quite smoothly. Until they met a mother. A woman carrying a child came forward. She actually passed Old Tayan's test, and he agreed to let her on the ship. However, Old Tayan stopped the child, firmly refusing to let it board. The woman immediately burst into tears, crying and screaming at the port. I am a citizen of Hoxia. Look at me from head to toe. Is there any part that isn't a product of Hoxia? Why won't you let my child on the ship? Old Tayan replied coldly, Mayam, you are indeed a Hoxton. But this child you're carrying. Do you take us for fools? Zhang Yai also looked at the child curiously. When he saw the child, he burst out laughing. The woman was holding a child about 7 or 8 years old, who looked healthy, with big, innocent eyes looking around, not understanding what they had done wrong. However, the child's chocolate-colored skin clearly did not match the characteristics of an Asian person. Old Tayan said, don't take us for fools. How can your child have that skin color? We've already said, only citizens of Hoxia are allowed on the ship. Even if you were an overseas Chinese, I could turn a blind eye. But like this, who are you trying to fool? Hearing these words, the woman immediately became agitated. I'm not lying. This is really my child with my husband. At this, Old Tayan and some of the sailors, including Zhang Yai, all changed their expressions. They had originally thought the woman was just trying to sneak a foreign child on board. But now it seemed she had married a foreign husband and had a mixed, base child. This caused a stir among the people who had already boarded, and were watching the commotion. Marriage is a personal freedom, I can't judge. But for me, I can't accept it. Jiang Yi stood up, walked over, and waved at the woman. Sorry, my ship will not welcome you and your child. Please leave. The woman stared in disbelief, looking into Zhang Yi's eyes. But I am a citizen of Hoxia. My son is too. Aren't you a rescue ship sent by Hoxia? Why won't you let us on? She was so scared she was trembling. Originally, only her son wasn't allowed on. Now, even she had lost the qualification. She was terrified. From the crowd, a tall man stepped out. It was the woman's husband. Hey man, what you're doing is not right. It's racial discrimination. What you're doing is wrong. I strongly protest. Zhang Yi laughed coldly. This is my ship. I'll let on whoever I want. The husband's face was a little embarrassed. But my wife and child are both citizens of Huaxia. They are your compatriots. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole scene exploded. Zhang Yi's expression immediately changed. Who is your compatriot? All the people of Chinese descent at the scene criticized him harshly. The woman seemed to still want to try. She patted the child and stepped forward, pleading, please treat us equally. We are citizens of Huaxia. You cannot discriminate against us. This is not right. Zhang Yi rubbed his nose. Actually, my education level isn't very high, and my ideological awareness isn't very strong either. He smiled at the woman who had married a foreigner, pointed at her and her child, and said, I just simply dislike people like you. So today, don't even think about getting on my ship. The woman pointed at Zhang Yi, so angry she was about to have a fit. You're bullying people. Wah, she actually started crying right in front of everyone. You're bullying people too much. It's not fair. Why won't you let us on the ship? What law did we break? Zhang Yi said, nothing. You are very compliant with the regulations. But I'm not letting you on the ship. What can you do about it? He didn't want to reason with people with brain problems like this. He preferred to be direct. The woman held her child and sobbed. Her husband, seeing that there was no hope, shook his head helplessly. Then he no longer cared about his wife and child and quietly disappeared into the crowd. He and the woman had planned that after she got on the ship, she would find a way to throw down a rope for him to climb up. Now that he saw there was no chance, he didn't want this burden either. The woman and child cried tragically at the port. Some people couldn't bear to watch anymore and reached out to pull the woman and child away. The woman slapped the ground and screamed, I am not going. I am not going. The people around them lost their patience. Do whatever you want, just don't block our way. We're still waiting to get on the ship. Things aren't the same as before. Just because she was making a scene with her child didn't mean she could morally blackmail Zhang Yi. Everyone was busy, still trying to fend for themselves. Who had the energy to watch her cause trouble? It was just annoying. However, due to the woman's disruption, a new round of chaos began to brew. In the process, some people did indeed show sympathy for the child, which ignited hope in the hearts of others. A blonde, blue-eyed woman, holding a child, walked up and stopped directly in front of Zhang Yi. The hope of life had vanished from her face. She was numb like a cold puppet. Can you save this child? He's still young. I don't want him to end his life like this. It doesn't matter if I die, as long as my son can live. Zhang Yi looked at the baby in her arms. The baby's skin was as white as snow, and he was sleeping soundly, his breathing gentle. Just looking at him felt warm. An image of another baby from the beginning of the apocalypse flashed in Zhang Yi's mind. He had come into contact with a baby this small before, Sai Lemi's daughter. Back then, she had taken advantage of Uncle Yu's kindness but was ultimately dealt with by Zhang Yi. In the end, her daughter did not survive, freezing to death in a snowstorm one night. Those who witnessed that scene couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow. Protecting one's children is a primal instinct. Save the baby. Please, let the baby live. It's just a baby, he won't eat much food. Give the baby a chance. The crowd on the shore began to shout. Different languages, but all expressing the same wish. The parents among them also brought their children forward, looking at Zhang Yi with pleading eyes. Zhang Yi's eyes were filled with memories. He thought of his hometown, of the beautiful years that had passed. Now, those things had all drifted away with time, never to return. If it weren't for the apocalypse, many children in Tanhai City would be living happily. He looked at the mother. Thank you for reminding me. Children are hope. The mother's dull eyes lit up. Zhang Yi continued, therefore, after I return, I will have someone send some supplies to my hometown to aid the children who are living in difficult circumstances. The mother was stunned. The others also did not expect Zhang Yi to be so cold-blooded. Hey, are you even a man? You see someone dying, and don't save them. A man with a scruffy beard shouted angrily. A bunch of adults. It's one thing if you don't care about us, but you won't even save the children. Are you even human? Why do men from the Huasi nation have no sense of chivalry? Disgusting, someone else chimed in. The others were also incited, angrily criticizing Zhang Yi, calling him cruel and heartless. Even Zhou Yun couldn't help but take a step forward. She looked at the small baby in the crowd and said to Zhang Yi, why don't we let the children come with us? They are hope. This world isn't over yet. Children are the future. This young lady is absolutely right. Without children, even if you can live on, what will become of the future of humanity? A man applauded Zhou Yun's words. The voice came from the ship. It was the fake Western devil, Xuan Dai. He stood on the railing, feigning indignation, one hand beating his chest. Save these children. Don't be so cold-blooded. As he spoke, he encouraged the people around him to shout along, children are innocent, children are innocent. Many people were moved by Zhu Di's voice and joined in, shouting at Zhang Yai, "Children are innocent, save these children." They looked at Zhang Yai with indignation, all feeling that his heart was too cold, too hard, almost inhuman. And this way of criticizing Zhang Yai made them feel as if their souls were being elevated, their character becoming nobler. Although not long ago they were still eating human flesh, they always liked to be lenient with themselves and strict with others. Zhang Yai also did not expect these people to be so fond of hypocrisy. He couldn't help but think of his neighbors in the Yanlu district. They were people who had truly experienced the apocalypse, so although they were cruel, it was the kind of cruelty that humans should have. But these people in front of him had no respect for human life. They had been on the island for too long. It seemed they didn't understand what the world had become. Du Yun whispered, "Let's save the children. They don't take up too much space, and they don't eat much." A cold smile appeared at the corner of Zhang Ye's mouth, his hands in his pockets. He turned to look at Zhu Yun and asked in return, "Oh, it's easy for you to say. There are so many people here, and a lot of children too, about 100, right? Many people have 2, 3, or even infants. Do you know how to take care of them? Do you know how hard it is to care for them? The journey by sea will take 2 months. With so many children, you won't be able to handle it. Besides, even if we can save them, why should I?" Zhang Yi spoke in a very loud voice. His words made many people look at him with angry eyes. Zhang Yi didn't care and continued, "I want to save the people of my city. There aren't that many children this big, probably a few 100,000, right? But what about after the apocalypse? How many survive? Altogether, not more than 100. Who cared about their life and death? Oh no. Who had a way to manage their life and death? On the soil of the Huasi nation, there are still many people living on the brink of life and death. If I have the ability, why wouldn't I save my own countrymen first?" He pointed to the baby in the mother's arms. "Yes, she is very pitiful. To die so young. But in the apocalypse, I can't be bothered with so much." Zhu Di shouted from the ship, "That's just your excuse. If you have the ability, why not save a few more people? Don't you know? If we could, we would even give our own chance to live to the children." Zhang Yai had originally not wanted to pay attention to this useless person, but upon hearing this sentence, he slowly turned his head and looked at Zhu Di with a smile. "You say so?" Being looked at by Zhang Yai, Zhu Di immediately felt a chill from head to toe. He just wanted to appear noble and righteous, to make everyone see him in a different light, so he had deliberately contradicted Zhang Yai. But in the end, how many people had Zhang Yi killed? Even a fool like Zhu Di had personally killed hundreds. That gaze sent a shiver down his spine. Clap, 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 Zhang Yai applauded. "Good, very good, wonderful. I like hypocrites like you the most. Since you are so noble, so great, I will give you this opportunity." Zhang Yi signaled to the sailors on the ship. Immediately, 2 sailors stepped forward and pinned Zhu Di down. Zhu Di panicked. "What do you want to do? Let me go, let me go." The sailor looked at him with contempt. "You idiot, look who you're talking to. Our captain is a famous figure in the Huasi nation. You mess with him, you're dead." After speaking, he directly escorted Zhu Di off the ship. Zhang Yi said, "Since you are so noble, willing to sacrifice yourself to save others. A gentleman likes to help others fulfill their wishes. I naturally have to give you this opportunity. Now, get off the ship. But I can also help you fulfill your wish, help you save a child." At Zhang Yi's signal, a sailor quickly took the child from the mother's arms. The woman smiled. She gave her child one last lingering look, waved goodbye, and said, "We won't meet again in this life. My child, you must grow up well, you must live well." She had no other wishes and slowly walked away like a living corpse, awaiting her own demise. As for Zhu Di, he only started to panic when he was forced off the ship. Wait, I didn't mean that. I just meant that I could help you take care of the baby. Mr. Zhang, there's no need to go this far. I was just joking." Before, he had gone along with the crowd, thinking it would be fine, that the law doesn't punish the masses, so his voice was very loud. But when disaster struck, he admitted his mistake faster than anyone. It was just a pity that he no longer had a chance. Zhang Yi didn't even look at him, just smiled and said, "What a kind person." He looked at the crowd, and said these words for everyone here to hear. "And no. Just now, some people felt that I was too cruel, too inconsiderate. I'm truly sorry, the resources on our ship are limited. From here to the Huasi nation is over 3,000 kilometers. We really can't take too many people." He stepped aside and pointed to the people beside him. "But don't say I'm inflexible. Now, if there is anyone noble enough, willing to give up their spot on the ship for these poor children, I will definitely be very supportive. Come on, anyone with such intentions. Right now, immediately, come see me." The line-up citizens of the Huasi nation were all silent. The people on the ship had learned their lesson, and didn't dare to go along anymore. They had watched with their own eyes as Zhu Di was thrown off the ship, after which he knelt down and begged Zhang Yi for forgiveness. A crew member, finding Zhu too noisy, gave him a blow with the butt of his rifle, knocking him unconscious. The parents with children, seeing this, went to plead with the line of citizens of the Huasi nation instead. A myriad of scenes unfolded at the port. The result was that everyone only used hypocritical words. But once they were required to pay the price with their own ticket, they became more stingy than anyone. Not to mention these foreign friends, even if their own fathers came, they might not be willing to trade. Zhang Ye said to Zhu Yun, who was taking care of the child beside him, "You see, people are all like this. The world outside is the same. It's better once you get used to it. You really don't need to treat them too well." Zhu Yun was speechless but still held the baby tightly in her arms, her eyes full of tenderness. Zhang Ye just shrugged at this. Zhu Yun was too naive, but she would soon have to pay the price for her youthfulness. He didn't want to simply judge whether Zhu Yun was a good or bad woman. Perhaps out of a maternal instinct, she had a bit of kindness, but this good quality was really terrible in the apocalypse. Zhang Ye thought to himself, "You should be thankful you have a good uncle. Otherwise, the first person I would have thrown into the sea for the fish to eat would be you." Although Zhang Ye didn't like Zhu Yun's way of doing things, out of respect for Zhu Zhen, he still had to pay some attention to her thoughts. As Chukir said, you have to look at the owner before you beat the dog. Even if Zhang Ye didn't value having Zhu Yun as a friend, he at least didn't want another enemy. Never anger a woman, especially a woman with a powerful family background. She will be very vengeful and may hate you for a lifetime. Shukir analyzed for Zhang Ye from a woman's perspective with a smile. Zhang Ye thought that Zhu Yun needed to be taught a lesson, to cure her of her meaningless kindness. He looked at the child in Zhu Yun's arms, a slight smirk at the corner of his mouth. He believed that it wouldn't be long before Zhu Yun had to taste the bitter fruit of her actions. It would surely be very interesting. After more than an hour of inspection, they finally found that there were over 200 citizens of the Huasi nation on Lava Flow Island. Of course, among them were many overseas Chinese, but at the moment, it made no difference to Zhang Ye. He needed a group of laborers to bring to Tanhai City. A rough selection would suffice. These people underwent a careful inspection, and only after confirming that no one was carrying weapons or communication devices were they allowed to board the ship. Over 200 people wasn't a large number, but the living space in the cabins became cramped. Zhang Ye didn't care, as long as there was a place to stay, it was enough. He didn't believe they would dare to be picky. Everyone was on board. Zhang Ye first had old Tayan teach them a proper lesson about the rules on the ship. All the rules boiled down to one: unconditional obedience to the orders of Captain Zhang Ye and the crew members. Anyone who dared to openly defy them would be thrown directly into the sea for the sharks to eat. The living area of the ship was divided into 3 levels and 4 standards. The highest level was the living area for Zhang Ye and the crew members. Zhang Ye and Zhukir's living area was the best. The captain's bedroom was warm enough and had hot water. The private room was over 50 square meters, very luxurious. Next were Zhu Yun and the crew members. They lived on the same level as Zhang Ye. Zhu Yun and Old Tan each had a private room, while the other crew members stayed in standard double rooms. The rooms weren't large, but they were warm and comfortable. The third tier was on the middle level of the ship, where the people from the Yanlu island group stayed. The environment here was a bit cramped. 7 or 8 people were crammed into a narrow room, and there was no gender segregation for them. They had to sort out the rooms themselves. If the distribution was uneven, they could only share rooms between men and women. At this time, respect for privacy was hardly a consideration. The 4th tier was on the lower level of the ship, where the other Hoxian citizens and overseas Chinese who were brought back were housed. They lived on the lowest level of the Golden Wind. It was previously a storage room for miscellaneous items, temporarily cleared out to become their living quarters. It was much more spacious here. A large room could accommodate 20 to 30 people, with no gender segregation, but simple toilets were provided. Bathing was basically impossible, but basic heating was guaranteed. Although not very warm, it wasn't cold enough to freeze to death. Thanks to the development of advanced science, they did not need to provide labor for the ship. Therefore, they were also required not to leave their area to go to the upper levels. Everyone crowded onto the Golden Wind and then went to their designated living quarters. It wasn't until their luggage was put down and they had their own beds that they finally let go of the stone in their hearts. They had finally left that damn hellish place. Life on the other side of the sea would surely be very good. Those who didn't know the outside world were naively hopeful at this moment. Johnny called Old Tan over. There are over 200 people below. Can you manage them? He asked directly. He hated trouble the most, so he was too lazy to do such things himself. Old Tan usually handled the daily trivial matters. Old Tan chuckled. Don't worry, Mr. Jung. I've been sailing for so many years, I've seen all kinds of sailors. I've managed bigger ships and more people. There won't be any chaos. But then he hesitated. Zhang Ye saw his strange expression and asked with a smile, if you have something to say, just say it. Old Tayan said honestly, the people on the ship seemed to have extraordinary backgrounds. They were all officials or powerful people before. Some might cause trouble after living comfortably for a few days. Hey, Old Tayan, I'm not afraid of them, I just don't know if it will cause you any trouble. Zhang Yi scoffed disdainfully. No trouble at all. You just make the arrangements as usual. If necessary, he pointed at Old Tayan's gun, don't save bullets. Just empty the magazine. If anyone dared to be stubborn and unruly on his ship, Zhang Yi wouldn't mind throwing their corpses into the sea for the sharks to eat. With these words from Zhang Yi, Old Tayan's heart was immediately at ease. A cruel smile touched his lips, and he unconsciously reached back to touch his leather whip. He had a set of methods for teaching those who didn't know their place. Let's set off. We have to go back. Zhang Yi turned and returned to the cabin. Old Tayan licked his dry lips, his face full of a sinister smile. Training these self-righteous big shots was what he loved to do most. At this time, a sailor came over and whispered something in his ear. Should we report it to the captain? The sailor asked. Old Tayan frowned. If the captain has to handle everything, what does he need us for? Let's handle things like this ourselves. He walked to the edge of the hull, leaned over the railing, and looked down. At this moment, a strange scene appeared on the side of the Golden Wind. Many hooks were hanging on the hull, and refugees, like grasshoppers on a string, were struggling to climb up. Meanwhile, some windows below were opened, ready to help them. Want to play this game with me? Old Tayan's face was all smiles, but he looked like a devil. The people below saw they had been discovered, and their faces immediately turned pale. Old Tayan drew a gun and aimed at the stowaways. Bang, 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 bang. Miserable screams echoed outside the Golden Wind but were quickly swallowed by the cold north wind. The stowaways were all shot into the sea. The people on the ship who were preparing to help them didn't see the stowaways, only a rain of blood and corpses falling into the cold, vast sea. A few women let out terrified screams. The others in the cabin had grim faces. The people on the ship are ruthless, someone couldn't help but say. As soon as the words were spoken, someone immediately glared at him, signaling him not to speak nonsense. The person quickly shut his mouth. After all, wasn't Xiuan's example right before their eyes? No one knew who would be the next to be thrown off the ship. And after the ship set sail, the only way to leave was to be thrown into the sea, a certain death. The foreigner Bai Mo and the Sinlu official Sha Haiqing were in the same room, both on the lower bunks. Hearing the gunshots outside, Bai Mo leaned against the cabin wall, his face full of pain. Too cruel. They're too cruel. They kill at the slightest provocation. How are they any different from those evil people on the island? Will we be killed halfway through the journey? Sha Haiqing chuckled softly. You're not a Huaxin, so I can't say for sure. It seems that Mr. Zheng doesn't like foreigners very much. Bai Mo's eyes whitened. For God's sake, don't scare me like that. You've already made me feel like this is a medieval slave ship, and I'm a slave on board, liable to be thrown into the sea for the sharks to eat at any moment. Sha Haiqing smiled slyly. Who knows? The distance from here to Huaxia is thousands of kilometers. We have to travel for at least a month or two. Anything can happen on the way. He had originally intended to just scare Bai Mo, but the more he spoke, the more he frowned. I hope the journey is smooth. Otherwise, if something happens, we will definitely be thrown into the sea, and we might even become their reserve food supply. Bai Mo's heart grew more and more fearful. He hugged his arms tightly, terrified. Why? Why didn't they send someone to save me? Zhang Yi had just returned to the cabin, intending to call Li Zhangju over for a detailed chat about the god's origin. It had been inconvenient to ask on the island before, but now he wouldn't miss the opportunity. But as soon as he returned, he ran into Zhu Yung, who was rushing in from outside. Mr. Zhang, you're finally back. Do you have any baby diapers and milk powder here? Zheng Yi spread his hands. Do I look like someone who would have those things? Of course not. Zheng Yi wasn't married, and he didn't have children. In fact, he did have them, but he wouldn't give them to her. Zhu Yung frowned slightly, her face full of difficulty. Earlier, seeing the pitiful child, she had brought it back. But it was a completely impulsive act, without any thought of the consequences. As a result, when the child woke up, it kept crying in her room. She was at a loss. After thinking it over, she could only go to Jukir for help. Although Jukir also had no experience with child care, she had been a doctor and was quite meticulous. After checking the child, she immediately said it wasn't sick. The reason it was crying could be hunger or a need for a diaper change. Zhu Yung was stunned. She had never raised a child, so how would she know how to change a diaper? Besides, there were no baby diapers on the ship. Jukir smiled and suggested she could try asking Zhang Yi. She knew he had those things, but whether he would give them or not depended on his mood. And so, the current scene unfolded. Zhu Yung had a conflicted expression. Zhang Yi sighed, then said with a serious face of encouragement, since you've chosen to bear this responsibility, then you should persevere. Go on, I support you. I believe you can do a good job as a mother. Zhang Ye's feigned sincerity made Xu Yung feel awkward and at a loss. They've never taken care of a child before. Zhang Yi said, there's a first time for everything. Didn't you say before that children are easy to care for? They eat little and sleep a lot. What big trouble could there be? He patted her shoulder. I believe in you. During this time, you just focus on taking care of the child. I'll have someone else arrange for the other matters. After speaking, Zhang Yi gave her an encouraging look and left. Xu Yung was at a loss, and after much thought, she still couldn't come up with a solution. At this moment, Xiuqir came out of her room and greeted Zhang Yi. He looked at her with a strange expression, which made her unable to help but laugh. Xiuqir went to Xu Yung and said gently, that baby is crying non-stop. You should go and see it. Xu Yung stumped her foot anxiously. I don't know what to do either. Xiuqir said helplessly, first, go to the kitchen and get some rice porridge for the baby to eat. Also, I think the baby's diaper is wet. You need to change it right away. But where can I get a diaper for it? Xiuqir said, baby diapers are made of several materials. Where can you find that kind of diaper now, besides a supermarket? As they were talking, Zhang Ye's voice came from behind. Here, come here for a moment. With so many people on the ship, we need to discuss the issue of epidemic prevention carefully to avoid an outbreak. Xiuqir said to Xu Yung, you should get to it. I have to go to work. Xu Yung had originally wanted to ask for her help, but she didn't stay and just left. Xu Yung gritted her teeth. She had to go to the kitchen first and ask the cook to make a bowl of rice porridge for the baby, then go back and prepare a diaper for it. Before she even reached her room, she heard the piercing cries, which even penetrated the well-insulated hull. Xu Yung gritted her teeth and pushed the door open. The baby on the bed had cried its eyes red, wailing, and the bedsheet underneath was soaked with a yellow liquid. Xu Yung's face turned pale. She screamed, my bedsheet, in this weather. It was very difficult to dry bedsheets, especially since the mattress was probably soaked. How was she supposed to sleep? Xu Yung lamented endlessly. For the first time, she felt immense regret. She shouldn't have accepted this mission in a fit of anger. She had initially championed maternal love and suggested Zhang Yi bring the baby along, because she simply hadn't thought she would have to take care of it. There's a very good old saying, those who carry others in their pockets are always too confident. When you don't have to do the work yourself, it's easy to talk. It's only when things really happen to you that you feel how arduous the task is. Xu Yung's head felt like it was about to explode. But at this moment, she smelled a very unpleasant sour smell. The baby had not only peed but also pooped. Anyone who has taken care of a baby knows how foul-smelling baby poop is. Unfortunately, the room was not large, and the heater was on, making the feeling even more unbearable. The poshmist Chu felt a wave of nausea and rushed out of the room, taking several deep breaths before feeling better. But the crying in the room continued. This room was not far from Zhang Yi's and the others, so they could also hear the sound. The thought that her poor care of the baby would be ridiculed by everyone immediately angered Xu Yung. I don't believe I can't take care of a single baby. Having mentally prepared herself, she suddenly rushed in. Changing the diaper was an extremely arduous task, especially for a novice. The diaper the baby was using was called a jizzy. In the local dialect of Huaxia, it had no waterproof function at all, just several layers of coarse cloth folded and tucked under the baby's bottom. The moment Xu Yung touched it, she immediately felt both her hands were wet, and she cried out in alarm again. This time, she cried, and the baby cried with her. Just changing the diaper made her feel greatly humiliated. But Zhang Yi, hearing this crying from next door, laughed happily. He sat on the sofa, comfortably enjoying his milk tea, and said to Xiuqir, guess how long it will take her to change that baby's diaper today? Xiuqir couldn't help but tilt her head and think for a while, then shook her head vigorously. I think it will be very difficult. She had seen her friends take care of children before, which had even made her develop a fear of pregnancy. It could drive a normal adult mad. Changing a diaper, the moment you open it and see the yellow, white substance, makes you feel like you're about to ascend to heaven. After all, Xiuqir thought to herself, if she had to do it, she would need some time to adapt. And this was based on the premise that she had worked in a hospital and had a strong mentality. Zhang Yi shrugged. Then let's just wait and see. After all, she chose it herself. Old Zhu had already said that letting Xu Yung go out this time was also to let her gain more knowledge, broaden her horizons, and experience the hardships of life outside. Zhang Yi was still thinking about how to make her understand clearly. As it turned out, Xu Yung took on a great responsibility herself. At that moment, when Zhang Yi saw the way she was holding the baby, he almost died laughing. Zhang Yi had no intention of helping Xu Yung take care of the baby. He also told Xiuqir and the others on the ship not to help her. A task she took upon herself, she had to do it herself. As for him, he left his cabin and went down to the living area of the lava flow group. When he arrived, several people in the cabin were whispering. The moment they saw Zhang Yi, they fearfully shut their mouths, then put on flattering smiles and greeted him. Hello, Mr. Zhang. Zhang Ye asked, "Where's Li Zongju?" "Tell him to come see me." Someone immediately went to find Li Zongyu. Not long after, Li Zongju ran up to Zhang Ye. "Mr. Zhang, you were looking for me." Zhang Ye said, "Follow me. There's something I want to make clear to you." "Yes, of course, Li." Zongju replied cheerfully, without a moment's hesitation. He was already mentally prepared. The secret he held was the very reason the Jianan Greater Region had sent people to rescue them from thousands of kilometers away. Zhang Ye led Li Zongju to the deck. There was no one else there besides them. Li Zongyu was wearing a down jacket for the cold, which was bearable in the 20-degree temperature. Zhang Ye walked to the railing, leaned against it, and asked coolly, "Tell me the story of that stone." Li Zongyu reached into his pocket, took out a stone, and slowly presented it to Zhang Ye. It was a yellow stone, somewhat resembling a Tanhuang stone. On the surface, it looked very ordinary, but the first time Zhang Ye saw it, he felt his skin crawl. All living creatures have instincts inherited from their ancestors, etched into their very DNA. The moment Zhang Ye saw the yellow stone, the genes within him became excited, as if they had discovered something they crave. "Is this the source of God?" Zhang Ye glanced at Li Zongyu, and calmly reached out to take the stone. He could feel a strange power still lingering within it, but it was almost gone now. "Where did you get this?" Li Zongju smiled and replied, "I'm sorry, I can't tell you right now. You have to ensure that I and the people with me get ashore safely." Zhang Ye smiled meaningfully. "Is that so?" He held the stone up to the pale sun in the sky but couldn't see through it. "Is this the secret to breaking the genetic limit?" Zhang Ye thought to himself. "I'm keeping this stone. You don't have a problem with that, do you?" After saying that, Zhang Ye put the stone in his pocket. Li Zongju nodded. "Of course not." Zhang Ye nodded. "Very good. Alright, we're done here. Go back to your business." Li Zongju still couldn't believe that Zhang Ye had let him go so easily. From his perspective, Zhang Ye was a very ruthless man. Li Zongju had even prepared himself to be tempted, threatened, or even beaten by Zhang Ye. But Zhang Ye's casual attitude was incomprehensible to him. He didn't know that his secret held little attraction for Zhang Ye. Zhang Ye was just curious and had asked a casual question. As for the mysterious source of God, whether it existed or what it was, Zhang Ye really didn't care much. He hated trouble. Let the Jiangnan Greater Region deal with such troublesome things. Perhaps he's a good person after all. Li Zongju shook his head. Although he still didn't understand Zhang Ye's personality, Zhang Ye's actions had earned him a certain degree of goodwill. The Jinfeng left the waters of Lava Flow Island and began to enter the deep sea, following the same route back to the Huasi Nation. The journey here had taken them more than 2 months, but now that they were familiar with the sea route, the return trip could be much shorter. It was estimated that they could arrive within 50 days. By then, it would be around November. Nearly a year had passed since the apocalypse began. Sometimes, Zhang Ye couldn't help but sigh at how quickly time flew by. But in the past half year, so many things had happened around him. On the Jinfeng, as the number of people increased, daily management was needed. Old Tian was responsible for this. The living conditions on the ship were divided into 4 levels. The meals for Zhang Ye's group were not prepared by the ship's cook but were all food that Zhang Ye had prepared himself. Therefore, the ship's galley had to provide meals for all the areas under Zhu Yunk's purview. Zhu Yunk and the sailors enjoyed sumptuous meals with chicken, fish, meat, and eggs. The 3rd level was the members of the lava flow group, who could still be provided with a portion of meat every day, although not much. As for the 4th level, which consisted of the citizens of the Huasi Nation or overseas Chinese who were later chosen to board, they only had meat once every 3 days. However, everyone's basic food needs were met. Initially, no one had any complaints about these living conditions. Compared to their life on Lava Flow Island, their current standard of eating had improved immeasurably. Every day in the cabin, apart from being a little bored, they could at least eat and drink comfortably. But as the old saying goes, some people should not be too full. When you're hungry, you only have one worry. But after you're full, you have countless worries. Soon, the troublemakers appeared. Zhu Yunk came to Zhang Ye, requesting a private room for Su Nuoxie. She is my junior, after all, and her personality is a bit naive. Living in a communal room like that, I'm afraid something might happen to her. It just so happens that I can't manage this baby all by myself. I need someone to help. Hearing this, Zhang Ye immediately burst out laughing. What's wrong? She could live in a cave, but now she can't adapt to a ship. Zhu Yunk's attitude was a little unnatural. In fact, she was doing this for herself. The past few days, the baby had nearly driven her crazy. However, because of Zhang Ye's instructions, none of the crew would help her with the child. At this time, her junior came running to her, proactively offering to help. In addition, Zhu Yunk's mood during the 2 months at sea had not been good. Now that she had finally found someone to talk to, she regarded Su Nuoxie as a confidant. Sun Nuoxi took the opportunity to request a move to a private room upstairs. As her best friend, of course, she agreed immediately. It was just one room. Weren't there empty rooms upstairs? Nu Yun pouted, a little unhappy. She looked at Zhang Yai. You guys won't help me. It was so hard to find someone willing to help, and you won't agree. Zhang Yai retorted, there are many people living below, and there's no shortage of women among them. Why can everyone else endure it? Why should she get special treatment? If we had known she couldn't handle communal living, we should have just thrown her directly into the sea when we brought her on board. Wouldn't that have solved the problem? Gyu Yun was momentarily speechless and had to resort to looking at Zhang Yai with pleading eyes. Zhang Yai, I'm begging you, can you please? I really need someone to help me. Zhang Yai thought about it. It was true that there were quite a few empty rooms on their floor. Giving Su Nuoxi a room wouldn't be a problem, and at least it would stop Zhu Yun from bothering him all the time. But when he thought of that woman's work style, Zhang Yai really disliked it. So he said, there are no empty rooms. Everyone is very busy. But there is a storage room she can have. Zhu Yun said in surprise, a storage room. Isn't that very dirty? Zheng Yi laughed coldly. Didn't she want a private room, because she felt unsafe in the communal area? Now she's complaining that it's dirty. She has hands and feet, she can clean it herself. If she wants to stay, she can stay. If she doesn't, then don't. Zhu Yun quickly agreed. Without Su Nuox's help, she simply didn't know how to take care of the baby by herself. After getting Zheng Yai's consent, Hu Yun went to the lava flow group and called Su Nuoxi to move to the upper floor. When the people in the lava flow group heard this, they all looked at Su Nuoxi with envious eyes. A girl in the group couldn't help but ask Zhu Yun, Miss Zhao, can we also request a private room? It's very inconvenient for us girls to live together with so many people. As soon as someone takes the lead, it sparks countless other thoughts. Zhu Yun's expression was a little helpless. I'm afraid that's not possible. Su Nuoxi is going up there to help me take care of the baby. But we can also help you take care of the baby. I don't need that many people. Gyu Yun had opened such a loophole for Su Nuoxi, and immediately, the other members of the lava flow group began to get restless, especially the women like Su Nuoxi, who all wanted to get a room on the upper floor. Who didn't know that the conditions there were much better than on the lower deck. But Zhou Yun couldn't do it. This ship belonged to Zhang Yai, and who knew how difficult it was for her to make such a request of him. A group of women, hearing Zhou Yun's refusal, looked very unhappy. Although they didn't dare to get angry, they still complained. We are all women. Why do you only care about her? We've also had a hard time. You see, there are many empty rooms upstairs. What's wrong with sharing a few with us? In my opinion, those sailors are all tall and strong men. They should be the ones living below. That's right, when I was in college, the boys all gave the good dorms to us. These sailors have no respect for women at all. Yu Yun awkwardly ran her fingers through her hair, not knowing how to respond to these topics. Seeing this, Su Nuoxi came over, linked arms with her, and said to everyone, what are you all complaining about? It's good enough that you were taken away from that godforsaken place. What are you complaining about? What's my relationship with my senior? What's your relationship with her? She said smugly. Besides, let me tell you, even if my senior didn't go to that Zhang guy, he would still have to obediently arrange a room for me. Do you know who my father and he are? The women of the lava flow group all looked unhappy but could do nothing about it. Because Su Nuoxi's status was indeed not ordinary, many in her family held important positions. Su Nuoxi smugly took Yu Yun's hand. Alice, let's go. Don't mind them. Su Nuoxi followed Zhu Yun, happily going up to the upper floor. Zhu Yun took out the key and led her to the storage room. As soon as the door opened, they saw it was filled with mops, rags, and large water pipes. There were even black diesel stains on the walls, and the smell of diesel was clearly discernible. This is... Senior, are you sure this is the right room? Su Nuoxi looked at Zhu Yun with a forced smile, unable to believe that this was the room arranged for her. Zhu Yun said calmly, this is it. I even had to negotiate with him kindly for this. You shouldn't be picky anymore. This is still much better than the communal room below. Su Nuoxi's mouth drooped like a duck's bill, her face full of grievance. I thought you had a lot of say on this ship, senior. Zhou Yun began to feel uncomfortable. I am, of course. My status on the ship is on par with Zhang Yai's. It's just that the conditions are really limited right now. Finding this room for you for the time being is already very good. I'll help you get a mattress and a blanket. You can arrange your own living space. Although this room was a bit simple, if arranged neatly, it wouldn't be too bad. Zhou Yun casually comforted her for a few sentences, then got to her own needs. Come over and help me with the baby first. He needs his diapers changed several times a day. I've already torn up too many clothes, and now I don't have enough. Help me wash these diapers that were just changed. Although Sun Nuangxi was a little unhappy, it was much better here than on the lower level, where a group of people were crammed into one room. She followed Ji Young to wash diapers for Su Mai. In return for the private room Ji Young had reserved for her, she had made a full commitment. But she hadn't expected the used diapers to be piled up into a small mountain, all covered in baby waste. Woof. Sun Nuangxi dry heaved, but to get the private room, she had to endure the nausea and hand wash these diapers. Soon, it was lunchtime. 3 meals a day were prepared by the kitchen and distributed to each level. The food was simple, mostly pre-processed, just needing a little reheating, served with a bowl of rice. This was also why Zhang Yai didn't eat with them. He and Jiukir woke up a little later, so they had breakfast and lunch together. At mealtimes, he would go out for a stroll to check on the situation on the ship. But it was in the canteen that a dispute arose. Zhang Yai heard it. Woman's crying and Ji Young's unhappy arguing. He frowned, knowing that it was the 2 women making a scene again. Besides them, no one else was allowed to eat on the upper level. Zhang Yai went over and saw that Ji Young had brought Sun Nuangxi with her and was arguing with the cook. Old Tian was also there, explaining with a helpless expression. Ji Young stared at the cook, demanding, "Why can't you add a portion for her? Mr. John has already agreed to let her stay on the upper level. Preparing one more portion is a trivial matter." The cook spread his hands helplessly. "Miss Jiu, you are not the captain, so you don't know that rice is as precious as gold. The captain gives us food according to a per-person quota. It's very clear how much each person gets. The food supply on the upper level is only for the 17 of us. If we give a portion to this Miss Su, the rest of us won't have enough to eat. Why don't you go and discuss it with the captain?" Zhang Yi stood outside, arms crossed, watching the commotion. He basically understood what was happening. The people below ate from a large communal pot. After Sun Nuangxi came to the upper level, she naturally wouldn't go back to eat that slop. An amused smile played on Zhang Yai's lips. He didn't rush over, but he was soon spotted by Ji Young. She angrily walked over to him. "Mr. John, I am one of the people in charge of this rescue mission. Don't I even have the right to distribute food to my own assistant? You have no authority at all." Zhang Yai cursed silently. He already disliked this Saint Sun Nuangxi, but he couldn't be bothered with such a small matter. He said to the cook, "From now on, when you bring the food for the Yanlu group, can't you just set her portion aside first?" Unexpectedly, the cook spread his hands. They said that too, but Miss Su didn't agree. Zhang Yai was a little surprised. "You're still not satisfied?" Sun Nuangxi, with tears in her eyes, stubbornly stared at Zhang Yai. "I am the daughter of an official family. Why should I have to eat such terrible food? I want to eat the same as my senior sister." It turned out that when she ate with Ji Young, she saw the huge difference in their meal standards and couldn't help but feel unhappy. For such a trivial matter, she caused a scene in the kitchen, preventing the sailors from eating. A flash of impatience appeared in Zhang Yai's eyes. He ignored Sun Nuangxi and turned to Ji Young. "You're the one who brought her up here. How do you think this should be handled?" Ji Young frowned. She could feel Zhang Yai's displeasure, but this time she didn't intend to back down. Because Sun Nuangxi was her person. If she backed down again this time, how could she face everyone else in the future? Ji Young's eyes met Zhang Yai's, unwavering. She retorted, "Since you can bring your woman on board and let her enjoy the same treatment as you, why can't I? I demand that Sun Nuangxi's living standards be the same as mine." Dungit stared at her, silent for at least 4 or 5 seconds. Suddenly, he asked, "Are you going through puberty?" "Yeah." "What do you mean?" "I'm just making a reasonable request." Zhang Yai didn't say another word. "He agreed to your request." Ji Young's and Sun Nuangxi's eyes suddenly lit up. They looked at each other, unable to contain their joy. "In the end, you still have to give me face," Ji Young thought. Zhang Yi looked at the cook. "Starting today, lower Miss Chu's food standard to be the same as that Miss Su." In an instant, everyone present was stunned, shocked by Zhang Yai's bizarre action. Who is Ji Young? The niece of the commander of Jianmen. And Zhang Yai had just lowered her food standard. Sun Nuangxi's mouth was agape. She had thought her crying had been answered and she could eat better food. In the future, she could use this as an excuse to make more demands. Who would have thought that Zhang Yai would lower Ji Young's food standard? This made it even more inconvenient for her to make requests. Ji Young's eyes widened like a catfish's. Her right index finger pointed at Zhang Yai, her lips trembling for a long time, but she couldn't say a word. "It seems you are also very satisfied with this decision, and have tacitly accepted it. Very well, from today onwards, this is how it will be." Zhang Yai signaled to Old Tian and the cook, then turned and walked away. The people on the ship were all his men. Although they would also show respect to Ji Young, as long as Zhang Yai gave an order, they would definitely obey. They themselves didn't like the crying and troublemaking Sun Nuangxi, so this was perfect. Zhang Yai, just as he left the kitchen, he heard a piercing scream. Ji Young was truly furious. She had even forgotten her agreement with him not to reveal his name to outsiders. This action made Zhang Yi frown. "Zhang Yai, you stop right there. What is the meaning of this?" Ji Young ran in front of him, ignoring her image, and glared at him angrily. Are you deliberately trying to provoke me? Jian Ye looked down at her from his height, saying nothing. But in his eyes, the lazy, casual glint had disappeared, replaced by a terrifying authority. He had killed countless people, so when he didn't deliberately hide it, that killing intent would naturally be revealed. At first, Xu Yunque was fuming, but now she felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over her. She instantly sobered up, and the hair on the back of her neck stood on end. You. Why are you being so fierce with me? It's clearly you who was unreasonable first. Am I supposed to come and make peace with you? Jiang Yi retorted, if you want to listen, then listen. If you don't, then stay away. I won't indulge your princess temper. If it weren't for your great uncle, do you think I would want to deal with you? If you're so capable, then you shouldn't have followed me in the first place. Go and sail on your own. He looked at her with contempt. Jiang Yi's voice was neither loud nor soft, but everyone heard it. Xu Yunque's face immediately turned red. What he did was no different from slapping her in front of everyone. Sun Nuangxi was so scared she bowed her head and said nothing. Jiang Yi said coldly, I don't want to see this happen again. If it happens again, I will lock you in your room and not let you out until we return to the mainland. Xu Yunque knew what he was talking about. Revealing his name to outsiders was a taboo. Fortunately, the people on Yanlu Island were very out of touch and had never heard of his nickname, the slaughter god of Jiamin. Otherwise, he didn't know what measures he would have to take to prevent the news of him being at sea from spreading. Calling you by your name was my fault, but you are also at fault. Xu Yunque seemed a little afraid of Jiang Yi, and her voice softened. She began to try to reason with him. You can bring Zhu Qir on board. I find an assistant to help me look after the baby, and you refuse again and again. Do you have a problem with me? She asked defiantly, tilting her chin up. Jiang Yi laughed coldly. So what if I have a problem with you? He said bluntly. Who I bring on the ship, even Miss Chu's great uncle has no opinion. Why are you so troublesome? Are you going through menopause? Do you think we have some kind of relationship? Why should I give you face? Because you are Zhu Zhen's niece. Sorry, if you continue to obstruct me from carrying out my mission according to the regulations of the region, I can absolutely decide how to deal with you myself. Xu Yunque was frightened by Jiang Yi's aura. She really wanted to go and complain to her great uncle, Xu Zhen, and say that Jiang Yi was bullying her. But after thinking about it, not only would it not cause him any loss, but it would also get her a scolding from Xu Zheng. He was not one to dote on the younger generation. Complaining about such a small matter would only get her criticized and lectured. Xu Yunque bit her lip and clenched her fists. She was scared but still refused to give in completely. So it turns out a captain like you is just using public office for private revenge. You have a problem with me and Sun Nuangxi, so you took this opportunity to get back at us. Even if you don't agree with my request, why do you have to mock and taunt me? Do you find it funny? Jiang Yi was so amused by her that he burst out laughing. Haha, using public office for private revenge. Do you think I'm that idle? I am responsible for the 148 lives on the third level of the ship, he questioned. Do you think the people on the ship will be obedient? They won't be grateful that we saved them. Even if they had such thoughts at first, they will later think it's a matter of course for the government to send people to save them. Then they will start to complain. Then they will demand more benefits. Today you set a precedent here, letting this Miss Su stay in the upper cabin and giving her favorable living conditions. What's the next step? Will we have to meet her other needs as well? Everything has to be up to her standards. When others see this, won't they have other thoughts? I don't care about the others, but for example, Li Zongju and his wife are the main targets of our rescue operation this time. They have been living on the middle level all this time. What if they also make demands? What if they cause trouble? Zheng Yin narrowed his eyes. I'm very afraid of that result. Do you understand? After Jiang Yi's explanation, Xu Yunque gradually realized the seriousness of the problem. It's not the scarcity that is feared, but the inequality. It might not show at first, but the injustice will accumulate and become a big problem. I didn't think that much. I just wanted to find a friend for myself and didn't want to cause you any more trouble. Jiang Yi scoffed. It's not easy for you to finally understand. Otherwise, I'm really afraid the ship will descend. Afraid. Xu Yunque looked at Jiang Yi in surprise. You would be afraid too. He was the famous god of war in the region. After the battle with the Eclipse Moon and the Samsara squad, he had become a hero of the entire Blizzard City, his fame for a time surpassing even Deng Shentum and Gao Changkong. He would be afraid too. Zhang Yin nodded, a cold, casual glint in his eyes. I'm afraid that killing too many people will dirty my ship. It will be very time-consuming to clean up. He looked at Xu Yunque, his voice devoid of emotion. I am very picky about my living environment. The strong smell of blood will affect the quality of my sleep. Xu Yunque suddenly felt a chill. From Jiang Yi's eyes, she saw that he was not joking. If the people on the ship caused him trouble, he would really kill them without hesitation. Jiang Yai had persuaded her, making her understand how much trouble her actions could cause. Although she was a little dissatisfied with his attitude, she was not a completely brainless princess. After all, coming from such a family, she still had some sense. So she said, "All right then, let Sun Nuangxi eat with the sailors. I won't give her special treatment anymore." Jiang Yai smiled. "How can that be?" He pointed at her with a serious face. "You don't have the qualification to eat the sailors' rations. From now on, at mealtimes, you will obediently go down and eat. Of course, if you don't mind eating a little less, you can share a portion with her. But as a punishment for you, for 1 week, your rations will be according to the standard of the Yanlu group." Jiang Yai was not easy to talk to, unless it was his family. With outsiders, he could be hard or soft. Just because Chu Yun yielded didn't mean his attitude would change. Chu Yun said angrily, "Fine, fine, whatever you say is fine, right?" She was angry not because of his actions, but because of his attitude towards her. If this continued, she was afraid the mission Zhu Zhen had given her would never be completed. She was also very sad. Why couldn't she win the heart of this warehouse manager with her charm? Chu Yun returned to the cabin. Sun Nuangxi was still expecting her to win back some legitimate rights for her. However, Chu Yun told her Jiang Yai's decision. "This is a very important time. For now, you just have to endure it. After we reach the shore, I can take you to the headquarters of the Jiannan region and arrange a decent job for you." Sun Nuangxi's expression changed. Chu Yun raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong? You're not satisfied?" Sun Nuangxi quickly shook her head. "Not at all. I know you are the best, senior sister. I'm so sorry for bothering you this time." She looked aggrieved. "After all, I didn't expect that guy named Zheng to not give you face. After all, you are the biological niece of the commander of the Jiannan region, and he is just a lowly soldier working below." A trace of contempt flashed in her eyes. He doesn't know his place, daring to be so disrespectful to you. I think he can forget about getting promoted in the future." She still thought the outside world was the same as before. Chu Yun said helplessly, "The outside world has changed long ago. Many things are not the same as before, including the rules you know." Sun Nuangxi asked doubtfully, "No matter how it changes, don't subordinates always have to try to flatter their leaders and their families? In the system of Huaxia, the one at the top has always held absolute power. This point cannot be changed." Chu Yun didn't know how to explain it to her. After all, the people of the Yanlu group had been isolated from the world for too long. They still didn't know what the existence of a top-tier superhuman meant to the outside world. In some small countries, people like Jiang Yai were like gods. Even the high-level officials of the 6 major regions had to try their best to get close to them. Just look at Zhu Zhen's attitude towards Jiang Yai. He was more polite to him than to his own son. In short, you just listen to me. Stay by my side from now on, help me take care of Sumi, and I won't let you suffer.